There is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the Infinity Gems. It is the middle ground between the big two and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination. At the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host. I am your host, the Church of Failure.
Chost.
Yes, I am the Chost today. I am your host, the Church of Failure.
Your chosiness.
Yes.
I'll roll it back. We started again.
Yeah, there we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, the Church of Failure, and with me, as always, is my trusty co-host, Eric McCartney. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good.
How'd you like that rewind sound effect?
That
was pretty good.
That was clever. I enjoyed it.
Joining us in the digital studio today, as we have affectionately dubbed it, is the one and only Optic Decay of the Morning Decay. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, buddy?
Hey, how you doing, guys? What's going on? I don't know.
Short.
I don't know.
Well, that's
Well,
great
I didn't-
introduction there, buddy.
I didn't prepare a lot.
I'm the same way when people bring me on their shows. I'm like, wait, you mean I can just sit here and drink? I don't have to run anything or have anything in my head. I can just shit post and drink on stream. That's great.
It's one of those things because it's like I don't go on a lot of live streams, so it's like when I have that moment where I don't have to worry about OBS and everything crashing on me.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take this easy.
Yeah, that's it. Like I said, I normally have a scotch or two during the show, but when I'm on somebody else's show, man, I'm just like, fucking bottle shots. This is great.
Well, I have a little rule. I do not drink for live streams unless it's particularly a drunk stream.
Well, that's all this is. So if you got a bottle, go ahead and crack it, buddy.
Well, I got nothing on me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, next time, you know.
Next time I'll be completely blotto. It'd be good.
Excellent.
All right.
Anyway, for those of you interested, I've got Optic's Twitter and the Morning Decay YouTube channel down in the description below if you want to check him out and give him a sub and a follow. Guy does great artwork, and
I do it live.
That is one thing I wanted to ask you about is how you got into doing art. My wife is an artist. I am what they call a professional tracer. I do a lot of Illustrator recreations and all that good stuff. I can do some graphic design, but as far as just creating the image from just nothing, that escapes me. So I'm always interested in how people got into drawing.
Well, I never had any formal training, which sometimes you can tell if you look real hard. But
Yeah.
One of the big things was how I started was It was one of those things where I remember like I was in like kindergarten and I just started drawing like G.I. Joe characters.
Okay.
And they weren't even doing anything like warlike or anything. They were just kind of like just G.I. Joe characters kind of hanging out because I thought it was kind of I liked the designs, so I kind of gravitated to that. So it's like that and like the Masters of the Universe stuff because that was like that prime time when when I grew up. So I really started drawing and learning through that, and then I discovered my father had a bunch of medical texts and stuff, and like a lot of anatomy things. So I started learning anatomy through that, and then it just kind of grew from there.
That is one thing that always kind of escaped me is how you and other artists that are actually decent at doing it put together a form without having like the Mars Girl long arm or the one thigh that's twice as thick as the other one. I'm just like, how do you get there without just throwing it in the trash and starting over? Because that's my problem.
It was one of those, I had that problem. I really had that problem like it was early on when I was learning to draw. It was like I didn't have any idea of form or things like that. So characters would have like really large, like misshapen egg heads, and they'd all just everything would look a little weird. But it was mostly because like when you're looking at a piece of paper, you're and you have your hand, the pencil and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything kind of has a little bit of a tilt to it, so everything gets a little off. so I just said to the teacher, like, "Oh, I'm just doing perspective," and just like, "Do you know what perspective is?" And I'm like, "No, not at all." um, but the big thing that really helped me was like by the time I started actually kind of like really forming ideas for comics and things, I kind of learned a little bit of just building it. You know, like instead of just going, "Oh, I have a picture in my head, I'm going to draw that picture." There's a whole aspect of where you can kind of build it. Like you look at it like a bunch of cylinders and circles. You
Right.
know, if you could do that, you could put up a proper structure of a person, you know, or an animal or any kind of object. You get that basic, like, oh, you see a car. It's basically just a rectangle with little stuff kind of pointing out for the hood and the back part, just a couple rectangles.
Right.
And then you got the wheels, the circles. You know, well, if you got that down, you could build on it.
Right. Yeah, you
Well,
can.
I mean, I can draw seagulls flying in the distance.
Hey,
Gotta
dude,
start
that's
somewhere.
a start. Like, definitely don't knock that, man. I mean, because I did that too, and eventually it was just like once I got the whole structure of things down, you know, like a seagull, you know, you can really just do it with with a a cylinder and some triangles, and then just kind of build on it.
Yeah, and I did study a lot of anatomy in high school.
Well, I bet you did, Panama Red.
That's
So
beautiful.
the topic that we initially discussed bringing on is variant covers, and the reason I brought that on is, as an artist, I wanted to get your perspective on how you felt about the practice of variant covers. We'll talk about blank covers and all of that good stuff, but it feels like to me that it's becoming a little bit more of an epidemic than it was when it first started in the 90s. And I've got some information on the history of variants and stuff like that. So we've got some stuff to go through. But is there anything you wanted to add or get into before we start talking about the actual comics part of the show?
Well, I don't know. When I think of like variant comics, it's like the way it is now. You're definitely right. It is a bit of an epidemic because it's not really helping stuff. But we can get to that stuff. But I grew up in a time when it's like you didn't have any of that stuff, and then eventually it was like, oh, let's put a hologram on it. Let's have trading cards packaged with it. Let's have a chromium cover.
Yeah.
And that's because that was mostly during the speculator boom.
Right, in the mid 90s, yeah. 92 to 97.
Yeah, it's like you want to know how much like a Death of Superman is worth now?
$6.
Actually, you're right.
I worked in a comic store
Actually,
for a very long
out here, most of the copies of Death of Superman, unless it's the polybagged edition with the armband, you're looking at quarter bin, bud.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If it doesn't have the bag, and there's $1 difference. The white bag is $7, and the black bag is
That's
$6.
Superman 500.
I thought there was a Death of Superman in the white bag.
No, it was actually the one where he's in heaven and he talks to Pa Kent and he decides to come back, and then that's
All
when
right.
he is rated Superman. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I've priced a dozen of those. I remember when those things came out, people were spending $50 at the comic shop to pick up a copy because they.
You know what I do with my copy of Superman? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Oh no, it was just gonna be the biggest thing ever. It was gonna be the most collectible comic in the world. Gotta have it. I want to buy 10 copies of it. Here's $500. And then what? 10 years later, 15 years later, it's like, oh hey, yeah, I'll give you $6 for that if it's in pristine condition in the bag.
Well, what I did with my Superman 500, because the cover had a special thing where it had like a weird, like almost like a color forms kind of peel off thing on the front.
Yeah.
Of Superman and Pa Kent. What I did was I took that, I peeled that off, and I put it on my window because I thought it was funny, and it was just one of those things. I just put bam right on the window. Like I don't give a shit. I was a funny kid like that. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, me and you kind of grew up in the day where comics, like, we saw that they weren't going to be worth anything. Like, what we were getting wasn't going to be an Amazing 15. Nobody's going to get an Amazing 15 printed in today's times. The closest.
Well, the only thing. Oh yeah. Sorry.
Oh, you're good, man. Just cut me off. I'll just rattle on because I'm used to Ayrton just sitting there quietly.
Oh no, because
Yeah,
it's doing
I'll
that
let him
thing
go.
with the audio. So Yeah,
But,
it was just doing that thing with the audio, so it sounded like you stopped the sentence, and then it just kind of came back in. I was like, "Oh, you're still talking shit." Yeah,
but
'cause I thought you like stopped your sentence, so it was like,
oh yeah, well I'll do that too. So keep you on your
"Oh,
toes.
that's cool. That's totally cool." To me, it was one of those things where like when that just started to happen, the only real cool thing I found of it was that all of a sudden I had 5 comic shops around my house.
Yeah.
Like that was the coolest thing. But then within about a year, 3 of them were closed. So it's I don't know. It's that variant cover thing happened. It was just a very weird time,
Well,
and it's not even as bad as it is now.
no, back then it was much better. I think the most variant covers put out for a book back then was like 10, and all of those.
X-Men #1.
That was only 5, wasn't it?
It was 6.
Okay.
Yeah, you had each one of each part of the larger image, and then you had one that had the fold out.
Yeah, the wraparound, whatever. Yeah. I've thrown long boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, you buy so many collection and everybody has like 20 copies of it. You're like, okay, we already have 15 of every one of these and nobody wants it. What do you want me to do with these 2 long boxes full of it? Wrap Christmas presents with it.
Yeah.
I mean, cheap wrapping paper.
Variant cover didn't start until the late 80s. John Byrne on Man of Steel, #1, was the first variant cover, and that was Superman standing in silhouette, or not in silhouette, but standing like opening his shirt. He had the full Superman body or whatever, and then you just had his chest with the shirt ripped open. Those were your 2 covers. And there was no retailer incentive. You could get as many copies of either one as you wanted. And I don't think anybody had a problem with that. And in fact, I think it made people happy to have that. But
those were good covers too.
Yeah. Well, John Byrne. I mean, what are you going to do?
It was at the height of his powers.
Yeah.
You're talking like that period of time where like John Byrne was like hitting on every cylinder. Not the angry version that's around now.
No,
It doesn't really put out anything.
Are we talking about John Byrne or Rob Liefeld? I can't tell about your
I'm talking about John. I'm talking about John Byrne. Like John Byrne just has his own little forum where he just bans people and yells at everybody.
Oh no, that was just a jab at Rob Liefeld. I never interacted with him, but he's got blocked on Twitter because I follow Ethan Van Sciver.
He hasn't blocked me, oddly enough.
I
follow Ethan, and I also follow Rob Liefeld.
I don't know. He blocked me one day after him and Ethan went to jabs, and then I was just like, "Wait, don't you have a crowdfund comic that's 6 years late, buddy?"
Well, if it's a Youngblood, I can understand why he can't do it anymore.
It's Brigade, but I think there are Youngblood's characters in it now, and yeah, his most recent update in August was he has to redraw like a good portion of the book because it has Youngblood characters in it.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, man,
screwed on that one.
Yeah, it's like, man, come on, this book's 6 years late. Something. Just send us a cover with some blank pages in it. Come on.
Well, at least he finally gave an update on Image United.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, it's not happening. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, no shit. I mean, you try getting those guys to work together.
Well, apparently it was because Todd decided that he didn't want to do it anymore, and then they all just went, okay, fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's the only one that still. If you call his book successful anymore, like Spawn 300 was a big deal, but that's the first time I've heard McFarlane's name since Spawn like 100.
Well, Spawn, it had a low readership, but the thing is, it still turned a profit. Like it's turned a profit all these years because they sell the collections like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a new edition of something, coming out. So, consistently he's been there. I mean, yeah, he may not have been top of the charts like he used to be, but Todd's got a decent run going there.
Up to the first 50 issues, it was the best-selling comic in America.
Yeah, I only read till about issue 22, that shipped about 6 months late.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was my problem with Spawn. Was that Spawn? It was like after those guest writer issues, it was like, oh, here's issue, like 17. Here's this one. But they all came out of order.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah,
I never understood
it was like,
that.
yeah, it was like issue 18 came after issue like 23.
Right.
It was like what's going on here? It's like at that point, just renumber the books, stupid.
Right. Yeah. Just
Because comics.
Yeah.
here's the image for the Man of Steel variant covers there, and that's the first instance recorded of variant covers. Now, we know that comic history back in I don't know, back in the 30s and 40s, like there were probably some re-releases that had alternate issues for the second edition and stuff like that. But the first actual day of release was Man of Steel, which was a 6-part miniseries, and you had an alternate cover for both number ones. Both of them were cover price at 75 cents, and that makes me cry a little bit because 30 years ago comics were less than a fifth of the price they are now.
That's what happens when you're not on the gold standard.
Yeah, I think that's one of the major problems. It's like the variant covers and then the pricing of
Right.
these books is really what's choking the. It's like that, and the fact that they were like, oh, digital's going to be the future, and then what they did is they're like, oh yeah, we're going to charge just as much, if not more, depending on what it is, for like, okay, you want to buy a graphic novel or something like that, you want to buy it digitally. Well, guess what? You're paying more than you would on Amazon for the book actually printed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if the server goes down, you don't get to keep it.
Yeah, I'm like, unless you downloaded it to your phone or your iPad or whatever, you're basically screwed.
Even some of those, like if we have a subscription to Comixology on the show here that we use for certain things that we can't find in stores, and it's cool and it's nice to have those digitals on hand. And if it's an image book, you can download a physical or a copy of it, a backup. But a Marvel or DC book, nope.
Yeah, you're pretty much screwed to whatever they decide you should have.
Right.
Yeah. But it's the pricing has been so off that you're just like, okay, so my option is buy a cheaper print edition and wait 2 days for it to come to me in the mail, or I spend the $25 on this book.
Like, yeah, so I can read it potentially only one time before I don't ever get to see it again.
Yeah. It's a ridiculous thing to ask people to do that, and that falls into a lot of the stuff like with with the pricing of books in general, is that it hasn't gone, because usually like when they up the comic prices, it was mostly due to like inflation, and that kind of basic economic stuff, right? So you saw like a book that was 75 cents go to like $1. Oh, it went to $1, $1.10, $1.25, stuff like that.
Yep.
And then and that made sense. That was fine. That was cool, because by the time you got to like the early 90s when like Image was doing stuff, you were like what, 225?
225 to 299.
299 was a little later, but it was one of those things like that. And they said, okay, 299, that's the limit. We're not going any further.
Drawing the line
now
at 299.
And now you have books that are like, oh yeah, here's a new book. It's like each one of the, that new Frank Miller Superman that's going on.
Yeah,
it's almost $8 an issue.
Right.
Jeez.
Yeah. And they try and make up for it. Sometimes they'll put it in like a cardstock cover or something like that. And I don't know, if you've seen me on Twitter or not, but pretty much every week, sometimes every show, we do a shout out to Peter Samedi at Alterna Comics for bringing back
Sometimes
newsprint.
every show.
Yeah.
It is every show.
Yeah, Peter Samedi's doing it right. I like that guy.
Yeah, bringing back newsprint. You're seeing some guys in the indie game right now. Tales from Nerosville on Indiegogo is $11 for 3 books shipped to your door. And these are crowdfunded comics. 3 floppies. We reviewed a couple of them on the show before, so I think I'm going to put an ad for the show in his book. He contacted me about it today, so we'll have to get that together. But
Oh, that's really cool.
That would be fun.
but we, I look at the price, and in certain scenarios, I get it, but digital was the biggest mistake I think comics ever made, because it increased piracy.
I just think they did it wrong.
Right. Well, it increased
know,
piracy, and when it increased piracy, then all the creators started a tirade against fans. And I'll tell you from a reader's perspective, if somebody has a comic book that I want to read and they let me borrow it and I like it, I'm gonna go buy it when I'm done. If I enjoyed it, I'm gonna go get my copy. So thinking that piracy ruins the market is just fallacy. But to go after fans for it, it's just
Yeah, I kind of have my own view is similar to yours, where it's like a lot of the people who are pirating comics, right? For one, you have the comic books at such a high price that people are like not willing to risk, like, because when it's like $1, $2, even $3, you could, I mean, people will just throw away that kind of thing on like an iPod, not an iPod. Wow, speaking boomers, on like an iPhone game or some shit like that.
Oh yeah,
that's no problem. But when you start getting to that $5, $6, $7 range, that's when you have people that are kind of like, I don't know about this. So I can understand where piracy would come into play with that. But a lot of people, if they like the book, if they are people that are actually going to buy the book, they're going to buy the book if they like it. So if you make a good quality product and they read it pirated, there's a lot of people that you could transition over, but the pricing model is not right. If you lower the prices a little bit, you don't have to have a fancy, crazy thing every issue. If you just make a simple comic book and you lower the prices a little bit, because like you basically just source new paper if you need to. You could make those prices in that range where they'll go, yeah, they might try it out with piracy, but on the back end, you could grab some of those people and pull them in as customers. Don't berate them. You could draw them in a little bit, Whereas the people that are just pirating just to pirate, those people were never your customers in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
So fuck those people.
A lot of times, if you lend someone like a storyline run, it might be like the first couple of issues, and then because they want to test it out, if they like it, they're going to go buy the rest of that run.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I used to. It was basically like I got out of comics. It's one of those things where with me in comics, it's always been a thing where I would get out of it for a while and then I come back later on. And it's one of those things like I would come back later on and I go, okay, this is a little too crazy, for me. Oh, okay, I need to catch up on this stuff. So what I'll do is I'll download a couple, I'll read them, I'll go, oh, this is awesome, and then I'll go buy the collections, which is a good thing. Because there's a little bit more of a better profit margin on that one.
Yeah.
So it was Grant Morrison's X-Men run. I didn't discover it till like a year after the fact, but it was one of those things where I was just like, oh, Grant Morrison's doing it. I'm like, I remember Grant Morrison. He did like some of like cool Vertigo books. He did, because I really like the Invisible. So I'm like, all right, cool. I got to see this X-Men run. It's got to be fucking nuts. I read like the first like 5 issues pirated, and then I immediately went and bought as many of the collections I could get because they weren't all out yet.
Yeah.
So I just got all of the ones I could, and I was just like, all right, everything else is on pre-order. I'm like, I'm ready to go. I ended up buying all of it, and it was a great thing, because I was the person that would do that and then go buy the book. So, it's a very strange gray area. Because it's always people who are just going to steal shit are just going to steal shit.
And they're going to do it no matter what you do.
Yeah. So getting mad and yelling at people, it's like, look, some of these people could be potential customers. Like, just don't be a dick about it.
Yeah. How much exposure are you getting from your cover being on a pirated website? Now, I know that, obviously as a state of principle, the show does not endorse pirating comics. Go out, support.
No.
But
I know, absolutely support your creators.
How much
definitely?
How much exposure do you get that you would never have gotten because you're on a pirated That's one thing that I think a lot of these creators take for granted because comic stores, like you said, they're disappearing. They're dropping like flies. I'm lucky enough to live in a place where I've had the same comic store for 30 years. They've never gone out of business. They've never, just completely stopped buying comics and went over full sports cards. Now you have seen the growth of like the Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, sports cards business, but at
Yeah.
at the same time, you still got the spinner racks of comics in the back, the new releases, all of that good stuff. You can still put a pull list together. You can do all of these things, and then when it comes down to it, you can still, get comic books from the same place you've been getting them since you were a kid, or you can take your kid in there and introduce them to comics. Now, I wouldn't suggest that these days at a comic book store because they don't put out all ages books unless we're talking about Alterna. But
Right.
Yeah.
that's another topic that we've trolled on about before is that comic books aren't recapturing their audience. It sounds like you are a lot like I am. You probably got into comics when you were a smaller, like a kid. You
Oh,
said
yeah,
that mentioned GI Joe and Masters of the Universe. I can assume that you probably read a comic book or two before you were in your formidable teenage years.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because it was one of those things where I grew up. There wasn't a lot of comic shops, and it was one of those things where like we had that boom in the '90s, but for the most part, we only had this one comic shop. It was originally in the mall, but the thing was, it kept moving.
Mm-hmm.
Because it used to be in like this little like dirt mall that I used to go play arcade games in. They had a really great arcade, but
Oh man,
it was
I miss those.
oh yeah, I'm kind of in the process of trying to figure out how to get some arcade one-ups in here. I told the wife. But it's one of those things where I'm like, they had a really good arcade, but it was very much like a very kind of like a grimy kind of shitty ball. It wasn't like one that you really want to walk around in,
Yeah.
and it just felt dirty going in there. But they had a really awesome arcade, and they had the comic shop, and the comic shop was right up front. It was awesome. That was where I first started, really seeing stuff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until my brother, he basically decided he didn't want to, do comics anymore. He was just like, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. And he just gives me his long boxes. And it was like
Ah.
Punisher and X-Men, and it was like some Transformers comics and like a lot of stuff that it was just dumped on me, and I was like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do with all this? And I started reading them because I was bored, and it was really good stuff. So I latched on through there, and then at that point, the comic shop moved to a strip mall a little closer to the house, so I was there every day. I was there every day, annoying the shit out of the guy who ran the thing, and they ended up closing down when someone
you.
actually no.
It was just to get away from you. It's like this
Oh.
kid's too annoying. We're closing the shop.
It was one of those things where like they ended up getting robbed. It was one of those things where like somebody broke in, through like a window and like cleaned out all of the books on the wall. And at that point the guy's like, fuck this, I'm closing up shop, and he immediately closed the shop. Never to return.
Damn it.
He got really pissed, but here's the thing. Years later, turns out he opened another place. It was even further down the road, but I was already into adulthood at this point. So I'm we're just going down the road and everything, and I see this comic shop, and I'm like, we got to stop in there. Turns out it was that guy who ran the other comic shop, and he's just like, yeah, I couldn't stay away. But he turned it. He turned into mostly a collectibles kind of thing, so it's like a lot of action figures. That was most of the square footage of the place. But then he had a whole area that was, the new comics and stuff, and that was dope.
Right.
That place has since closed, though.
Yeah, and that's the internet really dealt a big blow to the comic market as a whole. Even without digital comics, the ability to just click a few buttons from the comfort of your home and get anything you want delivered to your door is pretty detrimental to these small brick and mortar shops that have like this 10% profit margin. Because we were talking about the prices of comics earlier. I don't know if you've ever worked in the comic book retail industry or not, but it's a razor thin margin on profits for a comic book. You'll buy them.
Oh yeah.
You know, if it's a $4.99 issue or $3.99 issue standard for $4, that book for just under $2. Then you have to pay somebody bag and board it. Then you have to pay somebody bring it up. You have to pay you have to pay for the real estate to keep that comic book. So in the grand scheme of things, when you break it down, you're making maybe 50 cents a book in profit.
Right.
Yeah.
And lost leader, it always kind of has been since the big sports card boom in the 80s, and that's why comic books started trying to get in there. Remember the 90s where you had like Marvel X-Men trading cards and all that good stuff, where they were just trying anything they could to stay relevant, and that's when like the variant cover explosion happened.
Yeah.
You'd get the embossed and the sketch covers and all that good stuff. But recently, what I've seen,
I look at this as kind of like a blight. You know?
Yeah.
Especially like when it's retailer incentives for like, oh, you got to get. So they're ordering books that a lot of the times they can't even sell because they're overpriced and some of them are pretty low quality.
Right.
Buying all this just so they can get the variants and all the stuff, so they could maybe mark that up a little bit.
Right.
And
for anybody in the audience that doesn't quite know what he's talking about, it's pretty standard that, say a book has 5 different variants. They have what you call a 1-for-1. And that 1-for-1 variant is for every 1 copy of the direct retail version, you can order 1 copy of that particular variant. But then they have like 10 to 1. Obviously, 10 retail copies for one of these variants, but you still have to pay for it. It goes all the way up to 200 and of 1. So you'd have to get 200 copies of a retail comic, and retailers price them that way too. They don't just use them as incentives for good customers or anything. At cover price, they're paying $250 for that book, but because they had to order 200 other books, they're going to charge you $200 for it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I remember those margins are razor thin, so you got a razor thin margin on a whole bunch of crap you can't even return.
Right.
Because that's the big thing that really kind of screwed things. When you lost the newsstand, you lost that one thing that because with newsstand stuff you were able to return that.
Yeah.
You tear the cover or whatever and you return it.
It was the only form of
that was
accountability
actually a great
Diamond
thing.
had.
Yeah, and that was a great thing that was lost when they left the standard newsstand gimmick. I like that was probably the saddest moment for me when that kind of stopped being a thing, because I kind of like going to the grocery store. Just like if I wasn't even thinking about comics and I was just in a grocery store, I'd be like oh hey, they got some Batman, oh let me check that out, and I'd catch up on stuff through that way. Like there was always like that time where it's like oh it's there, cool, check it out. But like since you don't have that.
Have you heard about these Walmart exclusives that DC's been putting out?
No.
They're like 80-page giant or 100-page giant issues of the big 3
Oh, the
Batman
Walmart things?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've heard the Walmart ones. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, those are Walmart exclusives.
Yeah. And they're also partial. I remember they're partially reprints. Yeah, it was like one of those like partially reprint and partially new material, something like that, or is it all reprinted?
I don't know. I don't think a lot of it is reprinted actually, because talking to me about them in DMs a few days ago, and they were talking about a storyline that I had never heard of. I'm like, what? Because I don't think they follow any particular track of continuity. I think they're just written in those individual blocks. I don't think that you have to buy them monthly to keep up, kind of thing.
Yeah, or like a bunch of like, hey, let's take the done in 1 issues or like the done in 2 issues and kind of throw them in there, just kind of pad it out. Because I remember they were reprinting because I follow Jimmy Palmiotti. He's a dude I've known for like forever,
Right.
but it's one of those things where like he had like a new story and an old story, something like that, and it was like, yeah, go to Walmart, check it out. And I'm like, I'm not going to Walmart, no.
Get the damn thing in Target. We might be talking.
Yeah, because the Target's right by my house. I have to travel for the Walmart. It's like I'm not
Shoulders
going
with
to that
people.
thing.
Rub shoulders
Yeah.
with people at Walmart. I'm not about that. I don't want to end up on the
Yeah,
internet.
I had to go and do like an eye exam and get glasses and everything, which cost me a bundle. But I went in there and I'm just like, yeah, this is why I don't really go out, because there's too many goddamn people.
Yeah. Yeah. Hell, you can actually order prescription glasses. You can't do the eye exam from home, but you can order prescription glasses from the internet now. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, that was the big problem. Was I had to update my prescription, so that's why. So I was just like, okay, fine. I guess I'm here now.
Where are my electronics? Why am I not in my underwear? This is awful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. I'm just like, yeah, I got too used to the Amazon aspect of it. It's just like, oh, I want comics, I want this, I want that. Boom, just order at 2 a.m. and get it sent to me.
Later, it's at your doorstep.
Drunk at 2 a.m.
It's a beautiful thing, man. Oh man, yeah, I don't know. It's like when I think about a lot of like the variant stuff they're doing now, it's a lot more predatory on the retailer. Yeah, whereas because it's his thing, like basically like Marvel and DC, they don't give a shit if it sells to an actual person. Just as long as the store pays for it, they don't care. And so they're doing all this stuff and all these things in a market that can't really handle that kind of volume. You know, like Marvel pumps out more books now than they've ever have. You know, like we're talking.
We looked at last night in June. We were talking about DC and the downfall of DC, and they put out the lowest number of books that they put out in modern times this past June at 50, and Marvel had done like 104 that same month, and I'm like, who the hell is buying these things?
Yeah, it's a market that doesn't even support that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, and like as a business, you should be able to read the market and go, oh, okay, times are tough, and things are not going the way you want to. Maybe scale back a little bit, but it's like no, we got to do those Captain Marvel, 50-to-1, variants of whatever, like sketch covers and things. I don't mind so much because sometimes it's like DC, they do it a little better in that respect. Like if they do it like they do like it was Court of the Owls. They did a Court of the Owls edition where it's all the pencils.
Yeah.
Where where it was still a readable book, the whole thing, but the whole thing was in pencils. And I'm like, that's a cool thing to have,
Yeah.
So for people who are really into that kind of stuff, that's a cool thing. Make it like a nice little premium on the side. But don't make it like a variant or something like that. But then they'll do it like Marvel, and they're just like, oh well, you got to buy like 200 copies of this thing, and we'll give you one.
Yeah, I think there was a Venom variant that was like stupidly sought after, and it was like 100-to-1 variant. And my store was like,
Jeez.
"Sorry guys, we're not going to get any. Like 3 of you that buy Venom, so unless all of you buy 100 copies each, I can't help you."
Okay, the only thing I will support wholeheartedly though are the blank covers, but only if they sell them at conventions.
I was gonna get into that. I think that's definitely something that that's something that I think every book should be able to offer, because it doesn't require any extra real setup. I mean, yeah, you have to change the number on it, but I think every comic that comes out, you should have. I mean, if nothing else, just to ship to the artist and the writer, so that they can give them out at conventions and let people walk down Artist Alley with them.
Yeah, because to me, it's more of like a sort of like a bonding thing. Like if you're gonna sell them, like you could have the artist and Artist Alley sell them, or have like have the retailers upstairs go like, hey, we're selling or giving away a bunch of these things. You can go down and maybe you can give the guy like a 20 and have him draw the character on it or something like that. Because at that point, it's more of a bonding between the customer and the person who is providing said product, to where like it feels a lot more personal,
Right.
between the thing. And you can kind of that's the big thing with comics, is that you don't have a Stan Lee anymore. You don't have those guys that really drew you in and really kept you there, and like actually made you care about the product that you were doing. Now
we
it's
have Zoe
like,
Quinn.
yeah. You have crap like that, and it's just like, I don't know. It's like, it's very impersonal and very like, because I mean, last time I went to well, it was like the last time I went to New York Comic Con. I'm going again this year, but it's one of those things where like the last time I went, it was about 2 or 3 years ago, and they were all just really, like, for the most, unless it was like an old, like the older guys, they got it. They were cool, You run into David Lloyd, he's like, hey man, he'll shake your hand. He's your buddy. Chris Claremont, great dude. But then you got like a lot of that, a lot of the people who are sort of the new guard, and they're all just uppity pricks, except for like Sean Gordon Murphy. He's like the only guy who's kind of cool because he gets it.
You're talking about like the Gail Simones and the Mark Wades and the.
Oh, Mark Wade was always a dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
I met him. I met him in the early 2000s, and this is like before Twitter, before everyone really knew how much of a dickhead he was.
For Trump,
and he was an absolute. Yeah, he was an absolute penis of a human being. Dude, I was so glad him and Dan Slott blocked me. Like, as soon as I got on Twitter, they both blocked me.
Nice.
And we're talking this is pre-Comicsgate, pre-Gamergate, pre all that other stuff. They blocked me like right away because I was just like, I didn't like them, they didn't like me.
Well, best way to do it.
That has to be my favorite insult so far that we've had on this show. An absolute penis of a human being.
Yeah, he's just a walking penis with a little mustache on it.
Oh, yeah, walking around with a Hitler stash, calling people names. This is great.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, and like Dan Slott's another one. That guy was just always just a weird, creepy dude. like I don't know. He just seems like the kind of guy who. He just seems like he's the kind of guy who like never had a girlfriend and he's just mad at you because.
Wait a minute, you're married? I'm not okay with this.
Yeah.
You've seen a vagina in person?
Where's a guy like Jimmy Palmiotti? A guy like Jimmy Palmiotti, you walk into a convention, even if he doesn't know you or doesn't remember you. Like, I've met him a lot over the years, and we got along great. And like it was like when they were doing when him and Joe Quesada were doing the Ash comic. If you remember that, that was like the first time I met them. Like I was a fan of Joe's work, and I really didn't know who the hell Jim was for a hole in a wall, but I was actually working for a retailer at the convention. It was like one of those smaller ones, and it was one of those things where like they actually kind of hung out for like a minute, and like like getting along with them, because I knew a guy in comics who did like was Zen Intergalactic Ninja. You ever hear that one? I knew the guy who Zen Intergalactic Ninja. They made an NES game out of it. I was cool with the guy who created it, like the writer of it. Because he used to make a lot of appearances at the local comic shop because he lived locally to me. So I'm just bullshit with him at the show, and they kind of came over, and he had this way about him where he was like, "Hey, you guys want to do variant covers for me for my comic?" Because he was somehow managed to get every top star and up and coming star to do a cover for him, yet no one knew what the book was.
Yeah,
it was like, hey, you want to do a cover for Zen? And they're like, okay, I guess. And, like you got Sam Keith. Like Sam Keith in his prime did a cover, and it was like, how the hell do you pull that one off? And it was just like, I asked him.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. We got lucky. There's a comic out there that's really obscure, late 80s, like mid late 80s comic, adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters.
Oh yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
we've had one of the artists for one of the spinoffs and the writer for that series on this show before. And I'm just like, how the fuck did we manage that?
Dude, that's pretty sweet. But like, the thing with the, like Jimmy Palmiotti was one of those things where I don't see him for a number of years because I don't even think he even lives in New York anymore. I think he lives in LA now because a lot of the guys at DC, they all kind of just went over to LA since they moved
Right.
the
Well,
offices.
when they closed down the New York headquarters, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, like whenever I see him, it's one of those things where he'll look at me and he'll kind of remember, and then I'll say something really stupid, and he goes, "Oh, you're that guy."
Didn't I see you at a
But-
comic store annoying the owner once?
But the last time I went to Comic-Con though, ran into him, and he's like walking away from his table because he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get something to eat or whatever." But then he sees me, he stops, and he kind of comes over, and he goes, "Hey, guy." And I'm like, it's Rob. We've met repeatedly. And he goes, "Oh yeah, cool." It's like, "Is this your wife?" And I was with my wife, and I'm like, "Yeah, this is my wife." And he's just like, he just turns to my wife, and goes, "Wow, you really traded down." I'm like, "You son of a bitch." So it's one of those things where it's like there is some kind of rapport. It's like when we don't call each other or anything, but it's always like every 5 years or so
Yeah.
we'll talk about dumb shit.
The conversation just picks right back up.
Yeah.
I'm pretty big into the Magic the Gathering game and the lore and all that good stuff. I started playing back in like 96, 90. So I've been around the block. There's a couple of artists that make the circuit around my hometown every now and again, and they'll end up at the shop signing prints and whatnot. And every time I get an opportunity to go out and see a couple of them, like every time I get a chance to see John Avon, he's basically the Alex Ross of Magic the Gathering. But anytime you get a chance to see him, I go out there. Anytime you get a chance to see Mark Poole, I'm there. And it's just like some of these guys are just so down to earth and just so well, not well versed, but they're so well put together that they see a band that they haven't seen in several years, and you just pick the conversation right back up. It's like, oh yeah, I remember I did those lands for you back in the day. How's it going? You still using that playmat I signed, kind of thing?
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like he could probably not remember me at all, but he still gives you that feeling like he's friendly to you, and he acknowledges you to the point where it's like, oh, like you have that familiarity,
Right.
And that's the thing that's missing from modern comics. A lot of these people coming up, they just don't even bother with that. So you have someone like that who's just like that's the guy you should have as your ambassador of your brand. The guy who will draw you in, and the way he treated me was like, hey, I'm an old buddy from high school kind of thing, like hey man, how you doing, what's going on, and the thing was, he does obviously recognize me, because it's like I always just a fucking weirdo, awkward person who stands out in that way.
Would have guessed not by your avatar at all.
Well, it's like I've like, because that's the thing, is like when I first met him, I was like 13, 14 years old.
Okay.
Just like falling over myself trying to like do a lot of like comic stuff at the time, and
Right.
and it was one of those things like I'm sitting there and I'm like just doodling crap, and he's just like, hey, oh, that's really cool, like what are you doing, like, oh, you got a book, and I'm like, no. And he's just like, yeah, maybe you should try and get one, because that'd be cool, because that stuff looks pretty cool. It's like, oh, cool. And he's really encouraging the stuff, and like that kind of thing. Is like, that's the guy you want, up front. And instead, we got like Dan DiDio still around.
We don't give Dan DiDildo airtime.
Yeah, that's another penis. But
now in the spirit of fantastic segues, you didn't have a book then, but word on the grapevine is we might be seeing something from you on the indie circuit here soon.
yeah. there are some things I'm working on.
Do we got a scoop here on the Gospel of Comics?
It might be.
I think I've actually talked about them. I think I talked about it a little bit on the morning show, but then nobody remembers.
You take that episode
that works.
down. We want the exclusive.
Well, I've been working on a book for a little while now. I mean, I was originally doing a comic for people I don't talk about anymore, but the that's over. But the it's one of those things where I kind of want to get back to like some horror roots.
Okay.
Yeah, like just. But I also was just like I really like pro wrestling, you know. So it's like like that old style pro wrestling, weird kind of thing. And I'm like, how can I make this into a weird cult kind of Evil Dead thing? You know?
Okay. All right.
And that's kind of like where my jumping off
dig it.
point is.
Zombie wrestlers from Mars. I'm with it.
Yeah.
Well, it's more of like it's sort of like wrestling, because you've heard of kayfabe, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So basically, it's people taking kayfabe to that next level to where the whole town is basically kayfabe, and they have old style wrestling and the whole thing, and everything seems all nice and idyllic, but it starts with a guy is murdered brutally, and his son finds out about the guy's death. Turns out it was his father who. I'm just giving you a little taste here.
Just a little tease. Just the tip.
Yeah. His father was murdered, and essentially the son, because basically the investigation kind of went nowhere. The son wanted to basically find out about things because his father left him when he was a kid, which was a parallel to when I was a kid, and like my father left when I was 9.
Right.
I mean, he was kind of around, but it was different. It wasn't like a father-son kind of dynamic. So it's one of those things where it's like he doesn't have that kind of connection, so he wants to learn about his father, and it turns out his father was part of this wrestling company in this town. So he goes to basically discover this weird, messed up world of strange town, where everyone is just weirdly nice to you, and the weird pro wrestling element of just like this world that very much he's an outsider to.
Right.
And he essentially like I was kind of like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if I had this guy come in and go, yeah, I want to know like all this stuff about my father. It's like, oh well, the only way you can do it is we're gonna teach you how to be a wrestler, and they try and like indoctrinate him into that whole town tapestry.
Now that sounds interesting, and I'm not gonna pass judgment on it till I read it. But when you first started describing, first thing that I thought about was, you've seen From Dusk Till Dawn, right? The movie, not the show.
Many. I saw it in the theaters.
Okay.
It was one of.
Okay. Well,
it's not really like that. Like, think of it more of like.
Oh no!
I think the closest.
When you first explained it, the first thing I thought about that popped into my head was, instead of it being a strip club that they ended up at, it was a wrestling show, and then everybody turned into vampires.
That'd be a good one. You should save that one.
Oh yeah. But
just full swipe, go for it.
We come up with a lot of good ideas on the show.
We've been trying to get Marvel and DC to hire us to save their brand forever. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, right now, their only real care is that they're really just an IP farm at this point.
Yeah, lifestyle brand.
So, yeah, they couldn't give a shit. They're putting cooking shows on the channel, so I don't have much hope in them.
Right.
I don't know. My big thing was like, it was mostly because I saw Twin Peaks when I was a teenager, and I kind of stuck in my head because like the town was so weird, and like everybody was so messed up in that show. And the thing is, they were messed up, but it was more of like a subtle thing, where it was just weird, just for weird's sake kind of thing. And I'm like, how can I turn that into a weird cult thing? Kind of like the Undertaker, turns out to actually be kind of that gimmick,
right.
that'd be a good example. It's not their gimmicks, it's their actual lives. Like, they actually are that messed up.
I mean, I'm with it. Like I said, I'd read it.
I'm totally down.
But no, I
have no release date for it yet, but it's slowly getting there.
The fact that you're working on it before you even like try to do a crowdfund for it. That's one of the we did kind of a rundown on some of the things that we've seen in crowdfunding that we really like and don't necessarily like. And one of the things that we really like to see is that the majority of the work might already be done before people start asking for money.
Or at least the majority of the writing.
Yeah.
Well, I've kind of seen both sides of that. I'm like, I understand, like, you want to get paid for that time and everything and all that, but it's one of those things where I don't feel comfortable, taking money in without giving people something, fairly quick. Like when I do something on the show, I draw something. If someone wants me to draw something specific, I'll be like, hey, we'll talk about it later, kind of thing, and work out some kind of a thing where I'm like, hey, you're going to get something out of this and you're going to get it pretty much right away. So with the book, I'm not going to do crowdfunding until I'm pretty much almost done or actually done, so that the turnaround time is a lot quicker. Because I personally, like, I've supported a lot of books through the Comicsgate thing, and a few people who aren't outside of that, and I found that like for example, there's a book called Death Sentence. It used to be published by Titan Books. Now it's like it's self-published. The what he does with those issues is he has them done. He has them done and ready to ship. For the most part, like basically all to do is just maybe you just send a print file over. Like he has it all formatted, everything's all set up, and then he does all the rewards and everything, and he just throws it up on Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, oh, you're gonna get a book in a month. You just give me the money now, and I'll send you a book. And the turnaround time is really quick. So it's like that's really awesome. But then you have something like okay, like Ethan Skyber, some people love him, some people hate him.
An open platform.
It's one of those things like Cyber. Yeah, it's like with Cyberfrog, it's taken a really long time.
It has.
And it's one of those things. It's one of those things where it's like I can't really care about it that much anymore right now. I know apparently they're starting to ship it around now.
Right.
So that's at least good. And I'm gonna get it. Because I put in my money like last June. Like June or August, but it was one of those things.
So you got the original cover then?
Yeah, I hate
the original Chromium.
Yeah, but it was one of those things like I hate doing it's like a lot of that crowdfunding thing when they're only just starting the book once they got the money. I understand why, but to me, for people to really be into it, you want to get it when the excitement's there, like, oh, I'm gonna support this thing and get whatever bonuses or whatever stuff, because then all I have to worry about at that point is getting bonuses done so people have cool stuff in the mail,
right?
Oh, you do original sketches, here you go, I could just do them while I'm waiting for the the thing to get funded.
The book to get printed, the sketches, all that stuff to come in. Real quick, one of our frequent chatters. I try and acknowledge the chat as much as I can since we're still small time. Fun fact: former UFC middleweight champion Mike the Count Bisping had a small acting role in the new version of Twin Peaks. He plays a role of a shady security guard who keeps watch over a vault. That guy has zero acting experience. So that was in regards to your Twin Peaks reference earlier.
Oh yeah. I haven't watched the new one yet, but that's pretty dope.
I just got done watching the Scream ongoing series.
They made a series of that?
There's 3 seasons of it.
Really?
My God.
It's actually not terrible. The third season is the first 2, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen.
It's not terrible. That's a very British insult.
Yeah,
she doesn't have a terrible face.
Well, it's one of those things where I didn't watch Stranger Things until last weekend.
Okay.
I've still only seen 3 episodes of Stranger Things.
Oh, it's great. It's one of those things where it does go downhill after the first season, but it's downhill in a way where it's it's not terrible. It's still watchable. It's like
Okay.
you can still have some fun out of it.
It's an enjoyable trash fire. It's like a train wreck. You want to watch
Well,
it.
Usually
a
when you have a
dumpster
show
fire.
like Twin Peaks is a great show, but once they figured out who Laura Palmer's killer was, it was kind of like, well, where the hell do you go with this? Like, it was, and it kind of meandered for a little bit, and then when they finally started getting going, it was mostly because of an accident on set. In one of the shots, in it was like the woman looks in the mirror and she's in a bedroom, and in the shot is like one of the guys who works on the show, like one of the camera guys, like he's one of those dudes who like works on the show. He's squatting behind the bed and you can see him kind of peeking at her.
Yeah.
They ended up going, hey, you know what, you're not working on the production of the show anymore, you're now in the show, and he became the big bad guy.
Nice. That's fantastic.
Yeah, they basically made him a weird creeper because he was creeping behind the bed.
That's right. No,
Hey, if it worked.
that's when
And then the show came back after that. I was like, all right, I'm into this now.
So what you're saying is that Game of Thrones shown us where the Starbucks was in Westeros, and it would have been fine.
That would have been a really great twist instead of the bad ending they did for it. I was never really into Game of Thrones, but they shit the bed for most of it. But to me, it was one of those things where like I never really liked it, but I'm like, if they would have just went with that Starbucks thing and just kind of went, you know what, like let's just go real fucked up with it. It turns out they're in Middletown, New Jersey.
And the
M. Night-
barista's definitely not going to spell any of those names right on the cups.
And
Yeah.
No, and not only that, but M. Night Shyamalan was the executive producer on the whole thing.
It was
Oh, I
all the
wouldn't want
trees.
Seeing how bad he did Glass, I don't want him touching nothing anymore.
Oh wait, he messed up Glass. I didn't see it.
Yeah. I don't know if I really want to spoil it for you, but
It won't bother me. I'll forget it if I ever do decide to watch it. I have 3 kids.
Well,
I don't get to watch anything because I get to do this show.
I'll tell you, it's the definition of anticlimax.
So it's the lady in the water again.
That's
Well,
Shyamalan for you.
Well, no, but the twist is actually decent. I'm not going to spoil that one because if anyone wants to actually watch it, the twist is actually probably one of the more ingenious things about it. It's just that when you finally have that big thing where you have these characters, the one from Split and the 2 originals from
Right. You're creating your Shyamalan shared universe, if you will.
Yeah, they had a potential to go, hey, we could do more movies with this. Like it was strong. Yeah, it was strong enough to go, hey, we could do 2 movies with this. Then they kill them all. They just killed all of them. Yeah. Then and you're just like, okay. And it was really like nothing kind of deaths, but like the twist that they did for it, that was what you go for. Like that's the good part.
Okay.
But the fact that they ended all these characters kind of unceremoniously.
Oh no, they're
they're
just waiting to do the next movie where Haley Joel Osment's character from Sixth Sense comes back, and you find out he's a super too.
Yeah, but then who the hell is he going to interact with? Everyone else is dead.
Yeah, but Bruce Willis can come back as a dead person twice. They can superimpose him twice on screen as the strong man and as the investigator.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like you
Double
had
the
good
Bruce.
characters and you could have maybe had a franchise off of that. You could have franchised that crap. But then he's just like, nah, just gonna completely just mess this all up. And like they could have really done something cool with it, and it's just meh. It's basically X-Men 3 all over again. Where there's a potential for something, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, last night,
Quick segue.
Yeah, go ahead.
How come they've tried twice to make a movie out of the Phoenix, and both of them suck?
Mostly because it's a storyline where they always my big problem whenever they try to translate a comic storyline, something like that. Like when you do like Civil War, you're gonna have to make concessions to it, and they made a decent movie out of it.
Yeah.
With with the Infinity War, there's only so much you could really do in that length of time, so that makes sense the way they did it.
Yeah.
But when you have something like the Dark Phoenix thing, there's a whole part beforehand that they just seem to totally forget. Like there's a lead up to it. There's a build because it's
Right.
it's a more complicated story. So you have to let it breathe a little bit. You can't
have
just
to
do
plant,
it
you have to plant
into
the seed.
yeah, you can't
Yeah,
do
you have to plant the seeds in earlier movies, and that's one thing that they
Yeah.
never really did. Like you
Yeah,
got,
they show her, I think, in the Apocalypse movie, like going all Phoenix-y with the fire and shit to like stop Apocalypse, but that's about it. I think.
yeah, but you don't
yeah.
get into the fact that Jean Grey is the most powerful telekinetic out there.
Yeah.
You don't get little tidbits that Xavier has gone into her mind and locked away her power for so long. I think they did that in the original series in the last movie,
They talked about
yeah.
it.
but then they
They
never
also did that
actually
whole
did
thing with
Phoenix
the-
proper.
Yeah. And they criminally
Yeah.
underused Angel in that third X-Men movie.
They did everyone wrong in that third one.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where like in the second one at the end of it they did make a big Phoenix reference because like Jean Grey
Right.
sacrificed herself, that whole thing, and you're like, all right, but what about the whole first part of it? Like the whole
Yeah.
conflict of the character and all of the stuff that goes on with that. It's really important to the story. And also what happens after is a little more complicated than she goes wacky and kills things.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, one
I mean,
big.
they were able to do Civil War justice and the Infinity Saga justice. Why can't they do this one?
I won't say they
best
did the
X-Men.
Infinity Saga justice, but they did the Infinity Gauntlet story justice.
Okay. And yeah.
Sorry, that's just semantics. But
Yeah. You know what I mean.
so
Like, give us a good Dark Phoenix movie. God damn it.
One thing that they've always, and this is just my personal opinion, but when you deal with the Phoenix on screen in the movies, one thing that they've always tried to do that just doesn't work in my opinion again, they try and make the Phoenix part of Jean Grey's power set and not a celestial entity.
Right.
I understand why, because you can't really get a normie audience to get on board with that.
Well, you can now.
Yeah, you totally can now.
Yeah, but then you'd have to introduce the Shi'ar, you'd have to go into space, all of that crap.
Well, now that you have them in the MCU proper,
the Guardians of the Galaxy bring the Guardians of the Galaxy bring the crystal to Earth, and then Jean Grey stumbles across it.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah, there's a lot more options with that, but I'm thinking at this point, let's just stop doing the Dark Phoenix thing altogether. Just pick Extinction Agenda.
Right.
Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past again with Marvel.
But do it well, because that movie was not good.
It wasn't that bad comparatively, because I liked First Class.
Bad, but
I liked First Class, and I liked Days of Future Past. I think where they really stumbled with the new versions of the stuff was the Apocalypse movie.
Yeah.
Where it was more action over character stuff.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work because you had all these characters you were introducing, and you just had them just show up.
I didn't really like First Class that much, honestly.
Well, you got to remember, I was coming off X-Men 3. X-Men 3 was so bad that I was just like, anything is acceptable.
Now, if it would have been like Beast without the fur, Angel, Cyclops, and Jean Grey, like I would have been totally down with that as a First Class movie with them young. That would have been cool. And just like them trying to figure out their powers and maybe going on like one small mission. I would have been down with it.
Instead, they gave us X Factor.
Yeah.
I'm like, now you have like a lot of potential with the stuff, but I'm like, if you're gonna do something that like could tie into like the MCU a little more and actually like build up to it, is you could introduce like Cameron Hodge and like a lot of those the characters that people kind of forget from X-Men history who like are trying to actually like do some shit to them, and you can build that up, start building that now. Even without even having the X-Men there yet, you can start building them up like, like he doesn't like, superhuman people or, stuff like that. Kind of create a like sort of like an Amanda Waller kind of thing with it, and have it run for a little while. And then when you start having the X-Men in it, you can just go right into it, sort of like what they did with the Avengers stuff, how they built up to it.
Yeah.
do that kind of build and you'll get people excited again. But like where Fox really screwed up was it was like you had the first X-Men. If you really look at it now, it's probably one of the stupidest goddamn movies.
Oh yeah, it's yeah.
I mean, Wolverine is like Wolverine's a crying pussy. He's also half the size. You know, he is like he's really tall, but he was a little more lanky. You know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And also they tried to do the hair.
Right.
and it just looked like a giant ass on his head. And then I think the only good scene was the part where Mystique and Wolverine, like they're both like Mystique is looking like Wolverine, and I was like, oh, which one's the real one? And he goes, because he's like, Scott, you're a dick.
Yeah.
That's the real one. I'm like, that was the only good moment from that, where I'm like, all right, okay, like that was actually a genuinely funny line. But then they did the second one. The second one was good.
Yeah. To be
until
fair,
I'm the Juggernaut bitch.
well, that was the third one.
Yeah.
Was it the third one? I thought that was the
Yeah,
second one.
one.
Okay.
No, the
then
second one was Nightcrawler.
Oh,
Had
right.
That awesome opening scene with Nightcrawler in the White House.
Okay,
Yeah.
I remember now.
Yeah, I have a little bit of nostalgia goggles for the first two X-Men because I
swapped
young
those
when
two in my head because I didn't see X-Men 2 until later on after I'd seen 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I looked at X-Men 2 as like that. That's what a fully realized X-Men movie is.
Oh yeah.
To me, where it worked. They did well between all the characters. The people they got for him were good. Wolverine bulked up a little bit, and he didn't cry like a pussy most of the movie.
Yeah, they were using their powers together to like figure out how to take down Stryker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had a lot more going on, and it was like you were complicating things, but still having it make sense for audiences that weren't really into it. Because at that point, I hadn't read X-Men in a while, and I'm like, oh, this actually feels kind of right. And then they did the third one where they rushed to the Dark Phoenix in like, it's like, but like from when she started being the Dark Phoenix, up until it was like maybe 20 minutes.
Maybe.
It was like let's have the whole story happen in like. Because the rest of it is a lot of them just kind of talking and sitting around going, "Oh, Jean's acting a little weird."
Yeah. Should we take the cure?
Yeah. That cure storyline was this. Why is that even in there?
Yeah.
Especially at the end, it doesn't even make sense. It's like, okay,
well,
all right.
So Storm could sit there and preach about how Rogue, who can't physically touch anybody, shouldn't take it because nothing's wrong with her. Just so you could have that preachy scene.
I also think they did Rogue very wrong. They basically just made her. They made her a sad face Jubilee.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just so
they cast her perfect.
Yeah, the casting is good. Just the writing and the direction for the acting wasn't.
Yeah, if they did like Rogue kind of proper, it would have worked a lot better because she could pull off that Southern thing. Be like, yeah, what's up there, baby?
Yeah, sassy Southern girl.
Yeah,
who'll kick your ass. Yeah.
Hey, sugar.
And since they already had Mystique, why didn't they give her Miss Marvel's powers in part of her backstory?
Oh, that just gives me an idea. So everybody hates the Captain Marvel movie. They can bring the X-Men in and actually kill off that character by having Rogue absorb her powers.
Yeah, you can actually do it now.
And then we could get rid of Captain Marvel because everyone hates her anyways. It's Kevin Feige. Call, DM me on Twitter. I'll help you write this out.
Get that checkbook ready, pal.
Yeah, that's right.
No, man, this one's free.
No, I mean,
just get rid of Captain Marvel.
Yeah, that is definitely a great.
I'll do this pro bono if you get rid of her.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem was it's like a lot of people have a problem with that Captain Marvel. I personally don't have that huge of a problem with it until they kind of forgot what the character was.
Yeah,
it was one of those things, like when they did the changeover. Yeah, when they did the changeover from Miss Marvel to Captain Marvel, I was for it. I was definitely for it. But it was one of those things where it's like when they did it, it was when Marvel was still actually kind of trying. Yeah. It was right at that transition, and then immediately it was like right afterwards. It was like, okay, let's hire artists that basically draw her as a dude. I'm like,
Give her
Yeah,
the progressive. Let's give her the progressive Karen buzz cut.
I don't know. I didn't mind. I liked the design.
She wants to talk to Xavier, the manager of the X-Men, because Rogue took her powers.
Yeah,
But
but
no, I don't think that Captain Marvel was a problem as a character in her own movie, and even in Endgame. Now that I've seen Endgame, I didn't hate.
The actress is terrible for it.
I didn't hate Carol Danvers in the movie. I think the biggest problem is that, excuse my French, but Brie Larson's just a cunt.
Yeah,
I would have hired a Charlize Theron to do it.
that would have been a better choice.
And it's not even just looks; it's the fact that she's a way better actress
right.
than a lot of people give her credit for. I mean, she can sink into a role and be really awesome with stuff.
And I do have to say, I do like how they had Rocket make fun of her dyke haircut halfway through the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those things where like people are really down on the Jane Foster, Thor. It's like my problem was that the story, it had a really good core to it, but it was one of those things where it's sort of they sort of Clone Saga'd it, where it went on for way too goddamn long.
Yeah,
to where it was like okay, now you made the.
I thought it was still going.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, probably, because I remember the What If series of the Clone Saga actually went on about as long as the original Clone Saga.
Right.
Because it was popular. We'll just keep it going. Okay. But the big thing with it was like a lot of these ideas that like people don't like about with Marvel, especially now, is mostly because they overstay their welcome. And they don't really do anything with them. It's like you have the Captain Marvel thing. I mean, yeah, sure, you had the uber feminist, blah blah blah. I'm fine with that to a degree, as long as you're not just constantly hammering that point all the time.
And writing
everywhere. I think it was everywhere as well. And also, before we get too far off the topic, I remember the name of the actress that I suggested for Captain Marvel, Katie Sackhoff.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah.
That could work.
Yeah. Battlestar Galactica Starbuck. That's Captain Marvel.
I mean, she was essentially playing the character.
Yeah.
Being a little more serious about it. But yeah, I mean, it's like when you look at like a lot of the stuff that that they're doing, it's like you'll have this little kernel of like a really great idea. Having Miss Marvel, who at that point was kind of spinning her wheels. She was popular enough to where she's around, but not popular enough to where like. It's like, where do you go with this character? So it seemed like a logical point to jump off from. But then it became too much about the politics, not enough about the actual writing and actual story that people gave a shit about. I mean, same with like Ironheart. Ironheart in itself is a decent idea.
Yeah.
In itself. But here's the thing. They went wrong with it by trying to keep forcing her to be a hero character when they literally write her character like a villain. You could have had her.
She was literally a black chick that stole Stark Tech. Like,
no, I thought the funny thing was the issue where, like the teacher was asking like the students what do they want to be when they grow up, and she says I want to be Tony Stark, and then the teacher just goes, oh, that's nice, and sits back down. Then she stands up in the middle of class and goes like, why aren't you oppressing me? Why aren't you telling me no and that I can't? And it's like what the fuck do you want, kid?
That's like when a kid says they want to be a dinosaur when they grow up.
It's like, why didn't you punch me? Come on, do something.
Didn't Bendis write that? Because that's something that we've discovered about his writing. His dialogue.
I believe that was after Bendis.
Was it? Because I thought Bendis left and like at the end of the first Ironheart series.
Well, I mean, this was a little later on. Like the character had been around for a little bit before that. Yeah. I may be wrong with that because it was a weird thing. But
I'll be honest, I didn't read it. I couldn't do it.
I mean, like there was a thing when all the agents all the agents and the police showed up to her house, to like recover the stolen Stark tech, and then she just sits there and gives this whole speech of just like, no, it's mine. It was mine the whole time, and like all this, just doing like this whole thing, and then like her mother yells at all these feds, and they all just go, okay.
That is his last issue at Marvel Comics.
Oh yeah, he left that with a wet fart.
Oh yeah, that was his last issue at Marvel Comics, and then now he's writing this mini series that I'm intrigued about because they put the Legion of Superheroes on the cover and not in the actual book.
How the hell does that work?
It was intriguing.
It's a story about Rose and Thorn from DC's history, and she's going through time because she's apparently immortal now. For some reason, because of something she did while she was Thorn, and she doesn't, like, as Rose, she doesn't know why the hell she's immortal, but she kind of noticed that she wasn't getting older when her husband died.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I mean, it sounds like a decent idea. I'm hoping in the execution it's actually good.
Well, it's only 2 issues, and the first one wasn't terrible. It's a lot of dialogue, and it goes through 4 time periods of DC Comics. Like, they start off while Supergirl is like Madam President, and then they move through time.
And has a Hillary Clinton haircut, weirdly enough.
Yeah. But then they move through time a few times to like a post-apocalyptic Earth. They move forward again, and it's like Commandy times, where it's the last boy on Earth. And then you go all the way to the Legion time. So I assume issue 2 is where the Legion's going to come in, and like you're actually going to get Legionnaires and the Legion superheroes.
I would hope so. A teaser like they used to do in the 50s, where it'd be like, "Hey, it's Superman and Batman, they're baseball," but in the issue, there's no baseball.
Yeah,
there's no baseball.
Yeah, it's Green Lantern and Flash playing soccer, and at the end they're like, "Got you, bitch."
God, like that was one of the funniest reprints that I had when I was a kid. It was a lot of those World Finest comics, and every time a cover came up, I was like, "Okay, how's this gonna work?" And it never pans out. It's usually just like, "Oh, it's an imaginary story," and like, "What is it?" "Oh, they meet Rainbow Batman and they do all this kind of stuff." Okay. But what does that do with the cover? It's like, well, you know, the cover is them playing checkers.
Yeah, we got the cover drawn 6 months before we got the issue written. What are you asking me?
Yeah, I kind of miss that era where it's just like that's what I plan to do with my book. I want to have the book have absolutely zero to do with what's actually in the book.
Yeah, the cover just has nothing to do with the book. Like you look at the cover and you're like, "Oh, this doesn't look like anything like I just read." But
just do like an homage of the kid fighting a snake.
You have like Eisenhower playing laser tag with Sasquatch.
Yeah. and for some reason, there's just a monkey in the corner just looking at everything. Just like, why?
Well, a monkey with one of those...
a handful of poop ready to throw?
No, one of those music box things with the little hat on him.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, an organ grinder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Except he's running the organ grinder and there's a man dancing.
Exactly.
All right.
Oh, God. I might even have to draw that on the show this week.
Well, using that to segue back around to variant covers.
I was about to say, how the hell did we get on this?
I brought up covers.
I put in the tweet. We're going to start talking about variant covers and just tangent into whatever. So tune in.
Yeah, right.
With variant covers, one thing that I do have a problem with is that a lot of times when you get the 1-for-1 variants, right? Let's say that the cover B variant isn't as appealing as the retail cover, and that's all they have. Yeah, and that's all they have left when you get to the retailer. Like when you get to the comic store to pick. But
oh, I was gonna say that's been happening with the series from Image I've been reading, Sonata. The B covers are always so much worse than the actual just retail covers.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is this? I
don't
want this.
Sometimes you'll even get to a point where those covers literally have nothing to do with what's in the book. Like, they might not even have the same characters that are in the book on the cover. And if it's a gimmick like you were talking about with your comic, I mean, that's one thing. You know, that's a gimmick. That's a gag. Pull my finger and read this book. But
it also depends on the nature of the book. Like if you're doing like a Doctor Strange thing, you can have a fucked up cover that has nothing to do with the book because it's Doctor Strange. He does weird shit.
right.
So like that's where it works. Like in my book, it would work just simply by the fact of the weird nature of the book.
Right.
I could make something like that work. But if it's Spider-Man, why the hell is
Cyclops fighting the Blob on the cover kind of shit.
Yeah, stuff like that, and like that's when you're like you get a little weird. Like I always find it, I think it would be better that if you're going to solicit a book that has those covers, have those covers already made, and have the retailer have a choice.
Yeah,
like have it in the solicitation. Go, hey, here's cover A, here's cover B, like the 1-to-1 variant or something like that.
Yeah,
and just have it there so that if you look at the cover and it's a really shitty cover, you can go, I'm not going to avoid that one.
Right.
Well, yeah. One of the Sonata ones, like the cover was the main character chick in like this weird like winged outfit thing with like an old school like World War II looking pilot's like leather cap with goggles and stuff. Had nothing to do with the story.
Yeah.
At all.
I don't know. That's what I think is like crazy, that even books that like you wouldn't care about somehow have like 3 to 4 covers. I saw that like what is it, the Absolute Carnage event now? Every book involved in that has like 4 covers apiece. And you don't need that. Like back when they used to do it like in the 90s. In the 90s, that was when they started like going crazy with this stuff, but they didn't go that far. I mean, yeah, sure. You had the off issue that might have, like that actual 5-6 covers, stuff like that. But like when you get to like most books, it would either be like one or the other. It would just be like, okay, if we're gonna do a variant, it's gonna be like one of them.
One of the few comics that I own every cover for is McFarlane Spawn #1. You've got the gold, the silver, and the full color.
Yeah. That was a holdover because I remember Spider-Man 1 had a bunch of retailer variants and stuff. I mean, it had like the reprints where they changed the color every time,
right.
But then they had the platinum version, and stuff like that. Like that, it was one of those things where I thought that was a little excessive, and then I look at the stuff now and it's like, oh, issue fucking 2 of Absolute Carnage versus Deadpool. has like 4 covers. And I'm like, why does issue 2 have more than 1 cover?
Now that is one thing that I can give the digital market that does better than the physical market. And maybe the physical market could take a page out of this, so to speak, and do like they do in the trades. But if you're going to have 8 covers for a book, it might not all be stapled to the front or whatever, but why not just include them in the back? Regardless of what cover you buy.
Well, that's why I love when I buy trades is like they'll throw like those extra covers in there, like throw it in like a little gallery, make it like a little bonus, like, oh hey, here's some bonus pages of like all this extra art and stuff, because that's a cool little incentive.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, when you have the book, it's really astounding that like they're so tone deaf with this stuff. They just don't know what the hell to do. They're like, oh, our comic sales are down. Oh, I know. Let's make more comics. It's like, and it's like, yeah, but you have to have a market that supports that.
No. Let's not make more comics. Let's
Yeah.
fire a white male and hire Zoe Quinn. That seems like a great idea when our parent company
is not a tranny.
Well, that was the thing with her is that she's a failure at it. She's not that good. I've read her stuff. It's not great.
What was it? Goddess Mode was her book?
Yeah. Well, here's the Goddess Mode. I'm going to be a little controversial here. The writing was bad. Well, the writing was bad, but the artwork kind of had something going for it. It wasn't the greatest artwork, but it had a cool thing going for it. It had a really great colorist on it. But the real solid problem of it was the editor. The editor took all the stuff that was thrown at him and just kind of just shit the bed completely on it, because it was like, because I mean, one thing, you're trying to polish a turd to begin with, but
Right.
like there were some elements that were good. Like, yeah, okay, the story might be weak, but you could probably sell it like, oh, hey, look, this looks kind of cool. So because I mean, in the '90s, a lot of those books, the writing was terrible. No, but they looked really goddamn cool.
Everything was extreme.
Yeah, you had a potential to lean on your strengths with that book, and they didn't, because by the time the next issue rolled around, they leaned back on the art a lot, and then the coloring got a little more bland. Like, while they're still trying to do that kind of gimmick, and it felt like the editor didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Oh,
and like,
we made the comment. We made the comment on this show a little while ago that editors in like the big two comics, editors have just been missing in fucking action for almost,
it's mostly because they leave it to
almost 10
assistants
years
now.
now. Huh?
Yeah,
well, I mean, just doing coke off of hookers' asses in their offices at this point, right?
Well,
Yes.
it's mostly a business where it's like, now they're all like, it's always these older dudes, all these older dudes who have been editing for years, who are halfway decent editors, mind you. And then what they'll do is they'll hire assistants right out of college with no experience, and it's mostly so they can have a work wife. And,
Yeah,
right.
And it's just like, oh, you can just do whatever you want. I'm never going to say no to you. You can just do whatever you want. And they don't have any idea what to do with these jobs. Like, they're not, like some of these people that go in there, like especially at Marvel, a lot of these people aren't even trained to know what the hell to do. They just go in like, oh, I'll just make sure you spelled everything correctly. Oh, okay, thank you.
and they can't even do that.
Yeah, they'll mess up like basic stuff. I mean, that was always a thing. Like, they always had, sometimes they'd mess up the spelling. That's when you used to get the no prizes.
Oh, what was it? What was that newer Marvel book? I know this was a couple months ago now. We did a review on. There was a goddamn typo, like blatantly right in the text box. I
mean, back in the day, you had editors that really cared a lot about the books they were doing, and when they had, they would have their typos, and they'd have little errors and stuff, or little continuity errors, something like that, and people would write in, they'd send them a no prize.
Yeah,
and like they turned it into kind of a gimmick.
Now we would just be called a Nazi if we pointed that out.
Right.
Yeah.
You're anti-woman.
Right.
To do with your spelling.
Yeah. That may be true, but it doesn't matter. You still spelled this wrong.
Yeah, that's a big annoying aspect for you. It's like, oh, you're anti-woman. I'm like, no. In fact, a lot of my first comics that I discovered, like, was like the Anna Senti's Daredevil, which is a great book. It was following up from Frank Miller. So you think like, oh, the legendary Frank Miller. I'm like, I thought Frank Miller stuff was pretty good. I mean, I didn't really get into him until Dark Knight Returns. Mm-hmm. But it was one of those things where it's just like, all right, I can kind of see what the appeal is here. But like, Anna Senti kind of took that ball and ran with it, and kept the book consistently good for a number of years. And it's like, women creators have existed, since the beginning. It's just that, like, people just want to forget that now and be like, oh yeah, we're being more inclusive. It's like, no, you were inclusive before he was really like known for a lot of the comics he does, and now that guy has a hard time actually getting work. Just simply for the fact that, like, oh hey, I want to write Captain America, and they're just like, why do you want to do that? It's like, no, like, I remember there was an interview he did where apparently he had a meeting with Marvel, and they were just like, why don't you write like Falcon? And I was just like, well, why do you want me to write Falcon? It's like, well, because you're black and it's a black character. And he's like, I could write anyone. And they're just like, well, we don't need
That's the most racist thing I've heard this century.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they hired someone.
They gave him a chunk of watermelon afterwards.
Yeah, like they hired someone for the Ironheart book based on the fact that she looks like the character. She has the same haircut. Not that I mean, she had one book beforehand and it sold okay. Like it was one of those
Mags Visagia.
No. I forgot her name, but like it was one of those things where it was like they didn't hire her based on like a real experience. Like she had a book that was on like the young adult bestsellers or something like that.
Yeah.
So they pulled her with no comics experience, like she had never read a comic at all. Just pulled her out of the ether because she made a name in the young adult world. And they give her the book, and their big announcement of it was, "Hey, here's a picture of her. See, she's perfect for the character." And I'm like, "That's not how that's supposed to work. You got to have people that know what the hell they're doing, who can do it coherently and consistently."
Right.
Always kind of maintained as far as. Hold on, it's looking like we effed for a minute, but I think we're back. Yeah, we're good. We effed for a minute. F in the chat for the stream, everybody.
Yeah,
But,
YouTube's been screwing up a lot lately.
Yeah, well, I think it's just back end that they're trying to put more things that people complain about, so they don't complain about their monetization or censorship.
Right.
But one thing that I've talked to Ayrton specifically about a lot is my first foray into comics was Green Lantern. I quickly moved on to. They're probably my top two favorite characters from the big two. But if you ask me what my favorite story arc was, my answer is going to be what, Ayrton?
I think it's Secret Wars.
Is it? Is it
But-
Secret Wars?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I got into.
Here we go. By the way, buckle in. This is gonna be a minute while he goes on his Secret Wars tangent for the week.
I got into Secret Wars because when I was 4 years old, my dad had collected the entire series, and back then that was the first issue of the Black Suit Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
So I turned that entire long box into confetti one day while he was at work because I didn't know any better, and that was one of the things that I never quite lived down. Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, my dad would tell that story and embarrass the shit out of me, make me feel bad about it. So he passed
As
away.
you should.
Passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, and right around that time, it was about 4 years ago, because right around that time, Secret Wars 2015 was coming out, and I had a kid on the way, and I thought, what better way, to honor the memory of my father in the year of his passing and the year of my first child being born, than to collect the new Secret Wars for them to destroy and turn into confetti when they're 4 years old. And then I got a closet with a lock on it so that wouldn't happen. Outsmarted you, Dad.
Oh man. Yeah, but my unfortunate thing was that it was one of those things where I got in trouble when I was a kid. I was about 11 or 12, and my mother cut up a bunch of the comics that I had.
Oh.
She cut them up. I managed to save some of them.
Did you tell her that against the Geneva Convention?
Well, it was one of those things. This is one of those things where I even today I'll get a little, little bit of darkness back in my heart. Was one of the ones that was cut up was Giant Size X-Men.
Oh.
Oh no!
Oh, I mean, it was. I had a really, really good collection, but it was. I managed to save some of it, but then what happened was a pipe burst in the floor when I was 16.
Right.
There was like a pipe in the floor. We had the heating going through pipes in the floor. Thing burst, ruined the rest of them. So it was just like the entirety of my life in comics at that point was just gone. Right. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? I'm just not gonna. I'm not gonna collect comics. I'm not gonna read. I'm like, I was so mad about it that I left reading comics for about 5 years.
Well, the reason that I bring that up is because even though I destroyed at the time what was like a $300 book, plus whatever else was in the long box. I mean, God knows. When I was 4 years old, that was early 90s, so my dad had been collecting since the late 60s.
Ooh.
God knows.
Yeah, you're lucky he didn't take a shovel to you.
I'm lucky he didn't put me in the long box and just bury me. But,
Yeah, like that would have been the end, son.
but in his honor, every time I get a chance, and anytime I see the full collection anywhere, find a decent copy, I'll pick up anything that I can find of the original Secret Wars. So I've got like 4 copies of the original, like 12-issue series or whatever. And
That's nice. It was one of those things like when Secret Wars hit, it was such a great series.
it was made for toys. Like
Well,
literally,
yeah,
Mattel went to Marvel and said, "Write a story with all your characters in it that'll tie into the toy line we're gonna do, right?" And they were like,
yeah, it was that Jim Shooter era.
They're like,
That was the great thing about Jim Shooter.
Yeah.
Well, they already had experience doing that because they were the ones who were contacted to before G.I. Joe and Transformers really became a thing here. Marvel were the ones who produced the TV show. They did the comic like before there's a G.I. Joe
original
cartoon.
series. It turned into an ongoing.
Yeah, they would do that kind of stuff because it was basically the Jim Shooter era thing where it was like, hey, we could bring in some extra money doing some licensed stuff. And it was one of those things where it's just like it was like a little initiative where it was like, all right, but when it got time for the Secret Wars thing, it was like, well, we could develop someone else's property and share the money, or we could just keep the money for ourselves, for the most part. And that was when So yeah, it was Jim Shooter just going, you know what? Let's just make our own thing and make toys out of that, because at that point, they stopped really selling the Mego dolls, and a lot of those licenses lapsed. So they had the rights back. So they were just like, why don't we do something with that? And because they saw success with the G.I. Joe thing and the Transformers thing, and even the Micronauts book did well for a while. And then Ronin Warriors,
Space Knight had done well.
Oh, I just recently read an article that Jim Shooter wrote on his website. That is a great website, jimshooter.com. Great site, because he will give you all of the backstories, behind all that stuff. And one of them was how basically they were like, oh, we can get Steve Ditko back. And I was like, okay, well, what are we going to have him do? He doesn't want to draw Spider-Man or any flawed heroes. And he goes, well, Rom Space Knight, he's perfect. He's a goddamn robot. What flaws could a robot have? Fuck him.
Yeah,
and they brought Steve Ditko back for that, and it was amazing.
Yeah, that was that's one of the pride and joys of my collection is my full run of reader copies of Rom Space Knight.
Oh, that's one of those things. That was one of the series that I lost due to a vengeful mother. Was that whole and they'll never reprint those. Yeah, they will never reprint those because the licensing is stuck in so much limbo and red tape.
IDW has the license now.
They have basically a modern. I'm talking like the old stories. They can't reprint them.
No, they can't. Marvel still has the rights to them, but because IDW.
But Marvel can't even reprint them themselves.
Really?
Yeah, it's because what happened was the company that originally put it. It was originally a Radio Shack toy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had one.
Like through Parker Brothers. I think it was kind of cool. I never had one. When I was a kid,
lit up. That was about it. It lit up.
Yeah.
Its arms
Lights
and
are
legs
cool.
moved a little.
Yeah.
There were
It had a
3.5
shimmy.
points of articulation.
Well, at least it looked cool on a shelf a little bit. But it was one of those things where like Rom was one of those things, like that was one of the books that my brother kind of bestowed upon me when he was getting rid of his comics, and it was one of those things, I really enjoyed the book. The art was all over the place because it was like Steve Ditko not giving a shit.
Yeah,
because he's just like he's like, I'm just getting a paycheck, who cares? So Steve Ditko is worst, but it was one of those, even at his worst, it still looked right, but it was always a little weird because everyone looked like they were screaming at each other and they weren't. It was just like a normal conversation, but they all looked like they're screaming.
Well, isn't that a conversation?
Yeah. It's like what are they, Jamaican? What's going on? Why are they arguing? But
Or sorry, Long Island.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's a lot of that. I worked for the beach, and there was a lot of Jamaican guys that like they would just be like, hey, how you doing? Was literally screaming at each other. I was like, are you guys like what's going on? Is there a fight? Like what's going on? It's
Can I
like,
place
no, there's
bets?
yeah.
No, I mean half my family's from New York City, like Manhattan, Brooklyn area. So any conversation sounds like you're about to like be throwing down, and they're just talking about the weather
Yeah.
or something.
But
Or some shit.
I loved Rom so goddamn much. It was it's one of those like books where it's just like, all right, like I was a little kid, I was in for that. But at that point they weren't selling the toy anymore, and like Parker Brothers was taking it. Like Jim Shooter wrote a whole thing about it where it's just like, yeah, the toy didn't do so well, so they basically killed it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're asking about it, like, should we still do this comic? And they're just like, we don't give a shit, do whatever. It's like you have the license for like another 2 years, so do what you want.
Yeah.
We don't care about it. And then basically they didn't, because they used to have the Parker Brothers, they would have to actually pass for like Parker Brothers to see if they would approve it.
And then Parker Brothers just quit caring.
Yeah, it got to the point where once the toy failed, Parker Brothers was just like, we're not even taking your calls anymore for that book.
Block the number.
Yeah, so they essentially got to be able to like do that, and it was amazing because it was like then like the wheels were off and the story got weirder and weirder, and it was
did.
like,
yeah, that was around the time that the aliens came in, not the aliens, but the like the reptilians or whatever it was. You know what I'm talking about, the lizards.
You mean Joe Biden?
I forgot what they were called, but I remember like, it was one of those weird Bill Mantlo things.
Yeah.
You know, and I was always down for whatever Bill Mantlo was doing, because he always did some messed up stuff. He was the guy that they had in the office. It was just like, hey, we got this idea that's really weird. They're just like, go talk to Bill.
Yeah.
he does a quick line of coke and goes like, I fucking love it.
This is great.
I mean, it's really sad, like what happened to him, because he got into a car accident and he ended up being like in a really bad state all the way up until his death. It was a really like sad thing, but it was one of those things like when he was around and kicking, doing his thing, man, there was no stopping the weirdness that came out of that brain. And Rom Space Knight was a testament to that. It's like people are like, oh, Rocket Raccoon and like this stuff. No, it ain't got shit on Rom.
Yeah.
Remember the end of the series? The end of the series, yeah. He takes off his faceplate and he's just a dude. And it's like, you were a dude the whole time? And he's like, yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, he takes out the mess. He just turns the trigger. And he's like, yeah, I'm ready to fuck now.
Hey, baby, you
want
had a
some
female
fuck?
companion like through most of the series, and I bet she just felt like really rapey at the point. Like she was like, "This guy's been creeping on me this whole time."
Like, just imagine for the past 20 years, you're sitting there and you're making toast in this really reliable toaster oven, and everything's all great and everything's all wonderful. Like it toasts your toast perfectly and everything, and then one day it pulls off its front panel and it's really just a dude with a lighter. Like that's what Rom Space Knight did.
I'd probably fist bump him and be like, "Thanks for all the awesome toast, bro."
Yeah. It's just like it's a dude with a lighter who wants to really bang you, and it's like, but like this, there was no lead up to it. There was no tease of it. There was no like, oh, I did a thing that made me human. It was, I mean, they kind of had some kind of weird thing, but it was really the buildup was more of like, you know, finishing the the little war that he had going in the thing. And once he did it, it was just like he just turns to her, pulls his face off, and he's like, hey, look at me. I got a pretty coif of hair. You know,
That's somehow still done underneath this robot head.
Oh yeah, it was this perfect curly, like jerry curl kind of thing going on. Like he had like just, it was almost like pompadourish to me. It was bizarre.
Because
like popping out of. Yeah, and I'm like that was the magic of comics for me. I was like, at that point, I'm like, okay, you could do something so messed up with this stuff. Kind of like when Marvel used to do those epic specials.
Yeah.
I remember those. There's one that I've never been able to find again, where it's a dinner party at Latveria, and all the heroes go to it and all this stuff, and they all get drunk. and then Hulk just smashes up the whole place and like all this stuff. Basically, they have a big raging party.
Those were the oversized ones that didn't have to be approved by a comics code, right? They were technically magazines.
No comics code.
Yeah, they were technically magazines.
Yeah, because they had a. I remember there was one issue where they had Namorita's tit in it for no reason. Just somebody whoop, there's a tit.
I've got some oversized Captain Britons with questionable material in them like that.
Yeah, like, I mean, like, it's one of those things where, like, that was when, like, it was one of those things. It wasn't like Spider-Man. I really love Spider-Man, but like, to me, like, the discovery of comics to where, like, what the potential was always those weird, messed up kind of things. And I'm like, that's the stuff I gravitated to, because it was like, oh yeah, I read Punisher, I read Wolverine, I read Batman, all good stuff. It was all because at that time you had, you know, the British invasion of all the, you know, all those writers coming over from England, and they were bringing a lot of, you know, they were spitting hot fire all over that place.
They were bringing absinthe over, and
Yeah.
that really made a lot of difference.
yeah, it was one of those things, man, where it's just like, it's like, wow, you know, like, you know, the beginning of Grant Morrison when he was doing Zenith, and, you know, a lot of that stuff. It was like, I was like, all right, like, this is really good. But then I'm sitting there reading those epic specials.
Started getting stuff like Hellblazer and what was it, Sandman, and, you know, Preacher and shit like that. I mean, Ennis was Preacher.
Yeah, that was one of those things. Once I got into the 90s, it was like I started kind of walking away a little bit more from standard, you know, mainstream superhero stuff, and I went towards the DC like the DC Vertigo stuff. I really latched onto, because before Vertigo, it's like there was Swamp Thing, and then like Sandman started. Like, because people forget that, like, Sandman, while it was a separate Vertigo book for most of its run, the beginning run had goddamn Batman in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it
was goddamn Batman.
Yeah, like if you look at like the first book of Sandman, you're just like, why is there randomly Batman in this? Like, cause people are discovering it now. They're thinking, oh, it's this grand, you know, big, you know, literal, you know, literary, you know, treat, and then it's just like, in the beginning, it was very much a DC Universe book. Just like Swamp Thing was, and Swamp Thing, they completely flipped the fucking script on that one. And
Animal Man, same way.
Yeah. It was like a lot of those books that came out like before Vertigo. It was like, it was a really weird time, because it was that transition into that. And I came from those epic specials and like the Howard the Ducks, and, you know, a lot of the peripheral stuff.
Yeah.
Going into that, and it was a perfect transition. It was great. And that was when I decided, I'm like, I want to do comics to some degree, just by virtue of the fact that you can go that weird with it and still have people read it.
Well, that's also why I love like the really bad like B horror movies and stuff like that, is you can just get like as outrageous and off the wall as humanly possible.
Yeah, like Critters is great.
Troll 2. King 2.
Yeah.
Rubber. Have either of you seen Rubber?
That was that one with the tire that killed people? Yeah, shit like that. Like that, and like it was one of those things where like I discovered trauma movies when I was 9. You know, it was because that's the thing with my father. You know, like one of the things that was very weird was like, you know how like a lot of, you know, kids, oh, we're gonna watch some like family friendly shit, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I was about 6 years old, and he was showing me Death Wish.
Huh.
And, you know, and like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, like hardcore violent movies, and Rambo, and, you know, a lot of the big action stars and that kind of stuff. It was like stuff that you really shouldn't be showing a kid. But like he showed me Death Wish, you know.
What do you mean? This is America. The only thing you shouldn't show kids is titties. You can show them all the murder you want to.
Yeah. Murder, cannibalism.
Dude, in Death Wish, every movie someone gets raped.
You can bitch slap a hooker, as long as there's no tits, you're fine.
Right.
Oh, there was titties aplenty. In a lot of those movies. No. I mean, like Death Wish. Marina Sirtis of Star Trek Next Generation fame. She plays a Hispanic woman who's friends with Charles Bronson's character, who, gets raped for like 6 straight minutes in the movie. And then there's a storyline in it where the daughter of, you know, the main, you know, Charles Bronson's character in Death Wish. She gets raped catatonic, and then she kind of gets up and throws herself onto a fucking fence and dies. just hurls herself out of a window because she's so distraught about it and everything. And I'm like, why are you showing this to me?
What did I do to deserve this?
I mean, like that and like Chuck Norris movies,
Yeah.
which I marked out for missing in action, pretty big because they had an episode of Transformers that he was watching in one scene before he decides to go and free the prisoners. I was in a, and I remember that episode, and I'm like, wow, that's a really good Transformers episode. And he goes and starts killing people, and I'm like, no, go back and watch Transformers again. That was actually good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
My favorite is Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have all 4 movies on DVD plus the director's cut of the original one on VHS.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I not to interrupt the segue here. But the reason that I brought up Secret Wars a half hour ago is we were talking about whatnot, but I wanted to even take it back further than that. Even in story, people talk about Captain Marvel finally being a woman. If you remember Secret Wars, Captain Marvel, if I'm not mistaken, was an African American woman named Monica Rambeau, right?
Monica was my captain.
Yeah, mine and my wife's too.
Yeah,
but
she was actually a really well written character.
do you remember who was in the Iron Man suit at that time?
That was Rhodey.
That was Rhodey. So my first Captain Marvel was a black woman, and my first Iron Man was a black man.
Dude, the funniest thing was the action figure was a big fuck you.
Why?
The Iron Man figure, like all of the figures with the Secret Wars thing, they all had those shields.
Yeah,
with
none
the
of them
little
had shit to
lenticular
do
thing
with
in
the story. That was
Well,
the funny
it also
thing
showed
about
their
it.
secret identities.
Yeah.
And one of the things was their secret identities. And the Iron Man one, when you did the little turn, it showed Tony Stark's face.
Yeah.
he was already gone for a while at that point. They
That
were
was
just
just
like,
Rhodey.
no,
That
no.
was just Rhodey and Whiteface.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, like
He was
Like they were
baking some cookie. He was baking some cookies. Some flour got on his face.
it was like they're afraid to have a black character in the line of toys, and I'm like, what's the problem? Like Rhodey was my dude.
Yeah. Well, and like I've said before, my first introduction to Green Lantern was Jon Stewart in the Justice League cartoon when I was a kid.
To me, he was the best Green Lantern.
Oh
was
yeah,
awesome.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. We might have to
that
end
what-
the show on that one.
Oh,
No.
well, you have to
Well-
remember, like the time I grew up in, like he was the Green Lantern at the time, and
Yeah.
it was like
As-
he was a solid. He reminded me of like
As,
Deep
as
Space
an
Nine.
artist, I would expect that
Yeah.
Kyle Rayner would be your favorite.
Oh, I hated Kyle Rayner.
What?
Oh,
I really
Oh.
did.
oh,
I could-
fighting words.
Well, remember at
That's
that
my
time,
favorite
when that character came around, I was already I was in high school at that point,
That's
and
kind of a bitch.
I
High school.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, because remember, like you're going from Jon Stewart, who was at the time when I was really young, was pretty much a gold standard character because of how they made a flawed guy, but he wasn't defined by the flaws.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
But
the other thing. Sorry to interrupt you real quick.
oh, that's cool.
The other thing I liked about him is his use of the ring was very utilitarian.
Yeah.
His constructs were basic. Like he
Yeah,
would
he-
shoot laser beams, or put up a wall, or catch you in a cage. Like that was
Yeah, it
pretty
made
much.
sense.
It was very utilitarian, and I kind of like that about
Yeah.
it. And
On
and
the opposite
contrast-
side, though, the reason that I clung to Kyle Rayner because I was in my early teens. I don't know that I was exactly in high school, but I was on my way there. But I was still like a freshman era. The reason that I liked Rayner when he came on was because as an artist, he could do more with his constructs. Like he would create entire devices like motorcycles and shit to ride, and suits of armor and mechanics and whatnot, as opposed to Hal Jordan's fucking boxing glove.
But I mean, Guy Gardner did that
Yeah.
too. He would drive around space in a monster truck construct.
Yeah, well, that's why Guy's my favorite overall, but I didn't
I
know
mean-
about Guy back then.
Overall, yeah, Guy.
I gotta agree. Guy Gardner was awesome. Guy Gardner was an awesome dickhead character, and I loved him in Justice League International.
Yeah, me too.
Justice League International
One
was an awesome
punch.
book. Yeah. I really like Blue Beetle in that, and him and oh yeah, and Booster Gold, like that shit was awesome.
The reason, like the thing that always pissed me off about that era of DC Comics is that we never got a buddy cop book of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. Like we got team ups, but they were always doing superhero shit. We needed like a buddy cop book. We're just bantering most of the time.
Yeah, just like, I mean, like, dude, there was issues where they just sat there and just bullshitted the whole time while everyone else is doing stuff, and they're just like, whatever. Like, I love that. Like, that was fun. Like, I don't know. It's another one of those lost things in comics. Like, you don't really have that. I mean, the closest thing you got to it right now is what they're doing in Spider-Man right now. Like Nick Spencer's writing it. I know some people don't like that guy, but I kind of enjoy his. I don't know how. I don't have a total big feeling about it, but I kind of enjoy his Spider-Man run.
Aren't they making Spider-Man gay in that run?
They haven't done it yet, as far as I've seen. I'm also like a couple trades behind on it.
Well, that's one of the things that I'm seeing a lot on social media is that, and again, right now because Zoe Quinn is writing for both Marvel and DC.
Oh wait, they had him try to propose to Mary Jane again.
Again?
Yeah, they're okay.
Well, they make up their goddamn minds.
No. I'll tell you what happened. I can actually tell you what happened with this. When Nick Spencer took over, he had all that baggage from Dan Slott, where basically he was depicting Peter as basically not Peter.
Yeah,
like he's a dickhead. Like he was an unlikable piece of shit.
Probably gonna come out to be a clone.
Well, the first story is called Back to Basics, and what he did was he went, okay, all that Dan Slott stuff. We'll explain it, but we're going to go away from that. We're going to take a hard, turn on that one, and sort of reset things a little bit without really rebooting. So it's kind of like they address it by having there was a roommate that he had during Dan Slott's run where he was an absolute piece of shit to the roommate, and they had the roommate move back in with him, and then they kind of have a little talk about it, and they make nice and everything, and they do all that, and it's like, all right, okay, so they finally get to common ground. It's just like, yeah, I wasn't really being myself, and I was horrible to you. Like, I'm really sorry, bud. And it's like, just don't touch my stuff in the fridge, and we'll be all right. Like, like he's like, I'm watching you, asshole. And then it turned out that they got a third roommate, and the third roommate was a guy that he was stopping from robbing a place earlier in the issue. It was that Boomerang dude from
oh yeah,
from the Superior Foes of Spider-Man. He's now a sidekick to Spider-Man now, and it's kind of fun.
Interesting. What happened to Spider Bite?
Was that
a different series? Because there's 8 ongoing Spider-Man books right now.
Oh, this is Amazing Spider-Man. The main.
Oh, the main Amazing. I think Spider Bite came in City of Spider-Man or Spider-Man Cities at War or some shit. It's the one that IDW is covering.
Yeah, the thing that they did with Amazing was they sort of just kind of went like, let's make it a basic Spider-Man book. It's Spider-Man. He's doing his thing. He's actually being fun again.
Doing
Peter
Spider-Man shit.
Yeah, Peter acts like Peter again. And the way they did it was the rest of the world
being late places.
Yeah, it's like he's not the millionaire anymore. Like he basically got rid of Parker Industries, and he's just like, oh, I'm gonna go teach again. I'm gonna go, whatever. And it's just him. Yeah, it's him and 2 other guys living in an apartment, just simply by the virtue of the fact that Peter's broke again.
Yeah. Well, that is one thing that I hated.
Even though he's a professor and just got rid of his tech company.
That's one thing that I've always hated when they tried to replace Tony Stark with Peter Parker. They tried to do it during Civil War as well by giving him the Iron Spider suit.
Which the Iron Spider suit is kind of cool.
It's cool, but
I thought it was kind of ugly.
It's not the silver and black suit that he had back in the day. You remember that one?
Oh, that was the worst.
Yeah.
No, but I like how the tentacle arm things come out of the back, and You know,
Look,
that
if
kind
I
of
wanted
shit.
Spider
It's a
Octopus,
cool.
I'd write
I like how
Spider
they adapted it
Octopus.
for the movies. Like when they adapted it for the movies, it looked really cool.
Yeah, I did really like the suit in the movie. Anyways, sorry.
By all means, continue. But yeah, the thing about Spider-Man, and this is, I think, something that we can take and really correlate with Batman, because in Marvel and DC is the big two. They've always kind of been one step ahead of or behind the other, effectively. So DC is older, so they've always kind of had their figurehead character, which they initially thought was going to be Superman, but ended up being Batman. Marvel
Yeah.
has always
Because
had
he's
their
the
figurehead,
goddamn Batman.
right? But Marvel has always had their figurehead character in Spider-Man, and that's never changed until recently, where they've been trying to change it.
Yeah.
When you force a change, people are not really gonna. It has to be sort of like when you had comics in the early days. You had Superman, right? The
Mhm.
way the thing with Superman worked was Superman was huge. Like there was a point where Superman was way ahead of Batman.
Oh
In
yeah.
the beginning,
Well,
it was like Batman was
in
sort of like they were doing it,
in the
but
1950s, there was a book called Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, and that book sold, not shipped, sold 1.5 million copies per release.
sometimes more.
Yeah, like
Sometimes in the 2 millions right there with that one.
right, and
That was
that's not taking into consideration the fact that newsstands would buy back comics to resell them.
Right.
yeah. Yeah, like that was the cool thing about that. It was one of those things where like Superman was this massive juggernaut, but Superman didn't really like super like take off until they did the radio drama for him. Once they did that, it was like sky's the limit on that book. And then they sort of it's like once the comic code came in, it really stagnated the hell out of the book. But the thing is, they were allowing a little bit more of the detective stuff to kind of come back in. And that's when Batman was like that was the breakout at that point. Like because Superman,
Batman.
yeah, because Superman couldn't do a lot of the stuff that he was doing anymore because like oh hey he'd have like a date with a werewolf or whatever kind of crap. Oh, we can't do werewolves anymore. Can't do any of this weird shit. So they just did other weird shit. Like I remember my favorite old Superman story was a Superman Batman World's Finest thing. And what happens is they basically play the greatest troll on Lois Lane just to make her cry at a wedding.
Right. Are you
Um,
talking about the one that I am, where Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent swap costumes?
Yeah, like the whole time. Yeah, it's like Clark Kent asked her to marry her, and like she knows, she's like, oh, I know he's secretly like I'm gonna find out his secret and find out that he's really Superman because she had that little hint, like oh, like maybe he's Superman.
And then
And
Bruce
so,
Wayne ends up in
yeah.
the Superman costume at the end of the book.
Yeah, and they both laugh at her.
Yeah.
Like you dummy.
Uh,
Ha! Ha! Gotcha, bitch.
Oh, Papa Spank.
that's correct. Well, that's the thing. Like that's what comics were back then. Yeah, we do a segment a couple times a week if we don't have any guests or any topics planned. Usually on Mondays and Wednesdays if we don't have topics. I don't know that we're going to get to do it this week, but it's called Gospel Comics. Do like just rebroadcast of public domain old radio shows, and I don't know if you're familiar with The Shadow.
Oh yeah, I love the Shadow.
Well, I mean,
That's the most popular one.
It is, and he's basically the most misogynistic motherfucker on the planet. Like, he's like, "Here, Margo, put on this
every
bulletproof
second
vest,
of
go
it.
get shot for me."
The weed of crime bears bitter fruit. Yeah.
Nose.
Oh yeah.
What
No. What I love was I was about it was probably around 12 or 13. One of my older brothers, 'cause all my brothers are actually way older than me. He just gives me this basically like one of those little crate box kind of things. It was a box set of cassettes of the old Shadow radio dramas.
Nice.
Oh man, you still have those?
Yeah.
I think I have one or two of them. A lot of them just basically like, tape degrades over time. I don't know if they're even playable, but it was one of those things that I would love to get better copies of them, like maybe digitally or on CD or something.
Hit me in the DMs after this.
Okay.
I got you.
All right,
Okay.
yeah.
Hit me on Twitter. I got you.
Yeah, you follow me on Twitter, right?
Yeah, of course I do.
Oh,
I've been following you since the show that must not be named.
Oh man, yeah, it's definitely hit me up with that stuff because it's one of those things where it's like I really love them because it was one of those things, perfect time, man, because I was getting into a lot of that stuff and it was like the Shadow was dope.
Goddamn Dynamite.
He was an absolute dickhead,
Yeah,
but it was one of those things. But it was
like I said,
but
here, Margot, go put on this bulletproof vest and get shot while I hide the shadows and laugh.
yeah, he actually did that.
I know.
He put a I mean, for the audience, I mean, dude, he put a vest on a woman and had her get shot.
They're aware.
Oh my god, yeah. I'm like, I remember that one. That was hilarious because she was just like, "No, I don't want it." It's like, "You're gonna do it, bitch."
Uh-huh.
You're gonna do it, Margo.
This isn't a negotiation. Put the fucking vest on.
Margo, you're a woman. You only have one use.
And then make a sandwich.
Yeah, then he just laughs at her.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
But yeah, I gotta like that's one of the things that we noticed.
Mondays and Wednesdays, buddy. If you ever feel like listening to those old serials.
Oh no, I'm gonna send him the link now so he can listen to them whenever he wants to. But yeah, if you ever want to come on while we're doing one of those shows, feel free. We sit in the background while nobody can hear. I think one day we're just gonna unmute the mics and riff track the Shadow.
That sounds dope, dude. Yeah, I love that stuff.
The Jewish breastplate.
Yeah, the Jewish breastplate was one of the episodes.
Yeah. They were just like, you know what? Who cares? let's because all the other radio dramas at the time were all really, it was like Superman. It was just like very standard kind of stories. You know, you had a little thrilling stuff or whatever, but the Shadow was fucking nuts.
Yeah, there was always somebody throwing dynamite somewhere.
Yeah, I'm like, how many villains even survived in that story? Almost none.
None of them.
No,
there were no recurring villains except Fu Manchu, which was excruciatingly racist.
Oh yeah.
In the most wonderful way possible, though. Let's be honest.
Oh my god, yeah. Because it was just like, usually when you have like a character like that, you should have some kind of recurring thing or something just to keep the stories going. They're like, nah, fuck it, kill him.
There's criminals everywhere. The Shadow's gonna murder them all.
It's like, he'll find a mobster next week. Who cares? Just kill him.
Because
rich tires.
Who knows what
that shit up.
Who knows what evil lies in the hearts of men? The Shadow
Lurks in the hearts of men. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. No, we do that, and Novel Bro in the chat, funniest radio show ever. You should join us. Old people going nuts. Mago always needs to be with Dynamite. Ha ha ha. And it made me realize something. Dynamite Entertainment is the current publisher of Shadow Comics.
This is a weird side thing, but I always felt that like the Tim Burton Batmans were more in line with the Shadow than Batman.
Oh yeah,
I could see that.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, remember like when Batman first shows up and he announces that he's Batman to those two guys? He doesn't like leave them for the cops or anything. He just, he's like one guy
out of them.
Yeah, he beats the shit out of him, tells him he's Batman, then he just fucking leaves him on the roof. It's just like whatever happens to him, fuck him. And then also Batman, like in Batman Returns, he shoves the dynamite in the dude's pants and throws him in a fucking like throws him in the fucking thing and it blows up. But he smiles. He smiles when he does it.
Well, I mean, that's probably the best part of the boys show is when they shove the C4 up Translucent's ass, and then wee Huey blows him up.
I haven't watched the boys show. I've read the comics before.
You got to see it. You've got to see the show.
It's actually really good.
That's on Amazon, right?
My wife, yes.
Yeah.
My wife just way to admit that you pirated her.
I did not pirate it.
But
I was a mooch.
my wife,
wink.
No, I was a mooch.
me that,
I mooch off of other people's Netflix and Amazon and Hulu if I need to watch something for the show.
Oh, that's valid. Yeah, there you go.
But my wife explained to me before the show tonight that apparently The Boys has better ratings and viewership than any MCU TV show to date.
I believe it.
Imagine my shock.
But the thing is it's so it's almost in line with the books, Optic.
Oh, that's pretty dope. That's pretty dope.
Yeah,
I just started watching Ash vs. Evil Dead since it got canceled 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So of course I have to watch it now like it's a new thing.
Right, of course. Now that all the hype's died down and people aren't telling you to watch it.
Well, I think the best part about it is like Ash vs. Evil Dead. Like watching, I'm like, that is basically the purest comic booky kind of show that I've seen in years. Where it's just like it has that feel, especially the episode where he goes into the morgue and he's trying to find the Necronomicon that was hidden in a body. But the thing is that he sees these bodies and he's cutting up these bodies and throwing guts all over the place and doing all this stuff. And then he finally finds the one that has the book in it, and it's the most obvious thing. And I'm like, that is so like 1950s DC, you know, where there's literally a book shaped square in a dude's belly, you know, and he just kind of like he has the same reaction we all do. It's like, really, because he looks around the room, he's like, you know, and of course he gets like that intestine pulls him into the dude's ass, and that was funny because he's running around like a dead body on him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with the balls on his chin and everything, and he's just like, ah.
I think I saw that Men in Black.
I'm like that. That was really awesome.
Bad. That's basically the horror movie Bad Milo, right? The ass demon that will kill anything that's giving you stress.
I just love how the thing pulls him up into the ass, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is the most comic book thing I've seen in like comic book movies. I don't really watch a lot of them, but like they always had a feel where it was like they're not really doing the comic, they're doing like their own thing. So there's a bit of a disconnect with it. But then we have Ash vs. Evil Dead, and I'm like, this is the greatest comic book I've ever seen adapted, and it's not even a comic.
This is the greatest comic book I've ever watched on television.
Yeah. It's like all the characters. I mean, there's a whole thing where he has a bonding moment with his dad, where his dad finally understands that he wasn't really the Ashy Slashy the killer.
Yeah.
And like he finally accepts his son. And then he immediately gets hit by a car, and his head just splatters all over the fucking road. And then they cut to the next. But then they cut to the next episode, and he's sitting there like being sad about his dad while trying to push his brain back into his head, and it just keeps rolling the fuck back out.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And it's, where's his other eye? And it ended up being stuck to his car.
But my worst experience with any adaptations, however, is we just gloated all over The Boys. That's fantastic. But Preacher, another Garth Ennis book. Preacher is fantastic. I haven't read it.
Oh no, I read the comic. The comic was amazing.
Yeah, the guy that had to count sand for eternity.
Yeah. And of
but
course, our favorite, Arseface.
Ass face, yes. It is Arse face. But he literally has an ass for a face because he fucked up committing suicide with a shotgun.
Yeah. I mean, like,
I
never saw the show.
I
never saw the show, but like,
I watched the first 4 episodes, and it is a disaster. It's god awful.
Well, because you have to censor so much.
Yeah, but they didn't in The Boys.
Well, I think it's probably because it was on AMC, so it was on they couldn't go too
Actually,
far with it. And I'm like,
television.
then why the hell are they doing Preacher?
Yeah, why are they doing Preacher? Like, why not do something like you could do Hellblazer? Didn't Hellblazer have a show?
Well, they
I think
had
it did. I never
Constantine,
watched
but
it because I didn't want to have my heart
Well-
broken. But
the
I mean,
thing is, like,
Constantine put up
Constantine.
in like Arrow and the Flash, I think. That's the
Yeah,
most recent thing I think of.
go ahead.
Yeah, they have Constantine showing up now. Yeah, Constantine shows up and stuff now. But the thing was, they had a Constantine show, but it was more of them trying to change things because at that point they were canceling Hellblazer, and making more of the proper DCU. It was like during like New 52 because they made him part of Justice League Dark or whatever.
Right.
So they were
Yeah.
cleaning
Wasn't
up the
terrible.
character a bit. So the show was more of a sanitized version. I mean,
It was not a terrible book.
yeah, Hellblazer was great, but it was one of those things where the only way you'd be able to do it is if you did it as like the same people who did like The Boys, because there was a lot of stuff in there that was really hardcore, and it tied into another book that I love called Shade the Changing Man.
Yeah.
I love that book, but it was one of those things where it had this whole thing where it was a messed up book, and a lot of it was mostly because this guy who really hated Margaret Thatcher would always get drunk and vomit, and somehow a demon would happen, and like that's kind of one of those things that it doesn't translate when you try to clean it up.
Yeah.
Because
You're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, the character's a filthy asshole, and
Well, I mean, was
closest
there
they
a
came-
single issue in the first 2 dozen that he having someone very close to him die and soul compromised?
Yeah, I mean, the only real good adaptation is probably the Keanu Reeves movie. And the things I know it was kind of weird because they made him American, and it was Keanu Reeves doing it, but it was an actual decent translation of the what was it? Something Habits. What was the storyline?
It
was
was
the one
like
where-
issue. It was like issue 50 to 70 or something like that.
Yeah, it was one
was-
where he gets diagnosed with cancer, and they're like, "You're gonna die soon because like the cancer's really advanced," and he makes the whole deal and the whole thing, and then
And
when
reneges
they
on the
made it-
deal because he's John Constantine.
Yeah, and it gives him the fucking finger, and he's like, "Fuck you."
Mm-hmm.
Reneged.
Yeah,
That's
But yeah, it was one of those things, man, where it was like doing that, like the way they did with the Keanu Reeves movie. It's like, say what you want about Shia LaBeouf being a weird sidekick, and Keanu Reeves, because this is Keanu Reeves before everybody thought he was cool again.
Yeah.
This is that part where just like
Post Matrix, pre John Wick.
yeah, like the Matrix had already kind of sputtered out because those sequels are terrible.
I mean, I thought
yeah.
the Matrix was kind of dumb to begin with, but continue.
Oh, first movie's all right.
It's
Say to be
okay.
wrong here.
They should have just left it at that. But the thing was like after those sequels, it was kind of his stock was lower at that point. So you get him in there, and it was already kind of like, why is he here? Whatever. But he did it all right. He wasn't great, but he did it all right. But whoever put together the actual script for the movie and the people who really did that, it seems like they actually cared about the book enough to go, okay, we're gonna do it this way. So yeah, they Americanized some things for Americans, but for the most
Right.
part, it was straightforward, that story.
All the way
And it was-
down to
it
the
was good for
alcoholic
that.
preacher.
Yeah. Like that was some cool stuff they did, and it's sad that they didn't get to continue that in some fashion, or at least if they were gonna do it, like, oh, if you're gonna do a TV adaptation or something like that, just do Hellblazer on like the Amazon thing or like Netflix or something like that. Just
Right.
let them do it, or let Stars have it, because the Ash vs. Evil Dead was fucking great. Like if they got Constantine, they would do something awesome with that. Get the people who made that one. Get like it was I think it was like Sam Raimi's company that did that.
Yeah.
Get
No.
them on it.
Real quick aside, has Velocipaster come out yet, Church?
Yes, Velocipaster's been out. My
Oh,
birthday
okay.
weekend.
Oh, okay.
Wait, what's that?
Velocipaster. Pastor that animorphs into a velociraptor.
With the help of a prostitute in Asia.
So where can I get this?
It's available on Amazon and YouTube, I think. Like it's an
my
on-demand
God.
movie you can get. I'll send you the link to that on Twitter.
Oh my God, I need to see this.
Hey man, you keep up with me. We'll make sure you know about all the degenerate shit that I find.
Yeah, it's like I love the messed up stuff because it seems like the people that do that stuff actually care.
Yeah.
You could feel the care they have for whatever they're doing when they're doing like that kind of stuff, and when they care, I care, as opposed to Batwoman where it's just
Or
Oh, yeah.
or sometimes they kind of care, but they do it so bad.
so
that it's
basically it's like Travel Foreman's artwork.
right.
Yeah.
Like Suburban Sasquatch. If you guys haven't seen that one,
No, I missed a lot of shit.
well, I also watch.
Being productive and doing art. We've been out here being degenerate. You don't know what you've been missing.
Well, I also the only like YouTube channel that I really keep up with is Red Letter Media, who reviews all those really bad movies. So that's where I find most of them.
Velocipaster was actually reviewed by Ethan Van Sciver, and I maintain that he needs to do Volume 2 as a graphic novel. Call it the Velocipaster Volume 2 Velocirapture.
Oh God, that's perfect. Holy shit. Oh my God.
I don't care if that takes like 3 years for him to finish. I will back that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I'll shoot that over to you on the DMs as well. He's got a Twitter account, Velocipaster. So
Oh man.
I think we should.
we need that. We need that forever and ever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but
It needs
look
to. I need my kids to be coming up and being able to buy their own movie tickets by the time Part 10 comes out.
Yeah, but look up Suburban Sasquatch. It's great. The Sasquatch at one point rips one dude's arm off and then chucks it at some other dude and it hits him in the chest and he falls into a river and just dies instantly.
Oh,
It's
God.
it's fantastic.
But we're about at the 2.5 hour mark. I know you said you had to go here shortly, so let's go ahead and see if you got anybody's got any final thoughts, because I'm pretty sure we all have to get up and do our job thing tomorrow, or our life thing.
Yeah.
Optic gets to draw.
Yeah, I could do my warm-ups for everybody in the morning. Oh man. Yeah. Wow. I don't know. I don't even know if I even have a final thought. I'm just kind of like,
I'm not even sure what I'm still not sure what even happened during this show.
I'm not sure how we went 2.5 hours. Like we just started.
Yeah, I mean, after we go to therapy and we unlock those hidden memories, we'll remember that we were talking about variant covers for at least 5 minutes.
I mean, my
false
closing thoughts
advertiser.
Yeah, we talked about the trauma that the shadow does.
Yeah, I mean, my closing thoughts are variant covers are retarded and they need to knock that shit off.
Yeah, the market can't handle it. Knock it off.
One thing that I can say, and just kind of closing out on the starting topic, one thing that I can say is that I think with the advent of indie comics, they're doing it right. Because usually, if you back a project that has variant covers, you have the option of backing that variant only. Or all of them.
Right. Yeah.
But you're not tied into buying 15 of the main cover to get the variant.
Yeah.
Even on Cyberfrog, there were 3 covers for Cyberfrog.
Yeah, three covers and no book in my mailbox.
But that's between you and Ethan. He says it's shipping.
Well,
Hail Caesar
Gimme.
salads. That's all I'm saying. But no, I can't wait for it either. And I've seen enough of the pages. One of the biggest criticisms that I've seen recently, and you might get a kick out of this. He was on the Ralph Report probably a few months ago, and somebody called in while he was on the Ralph Report and said, "We all know there's only 17 pages done, Ethan."
I mean, how could you possibly know that?
I mean, I've got more than 17 pages saved in my CyberFrog folder.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's definitely posted more than that. I know he hasn't posted a lot of it, but he's posted a sizable chunk. What is it, like an 80-page book?
80-page book, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a lot of. I mean, dude, I'll tell you one thing. People think like it's one of those big things that I've found when dealing with people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Is they think that like a comic is a really simple thing. Oh, you just throw some words on it. It's all fine. It's like, yeah, you can get that shit out in like fucking 3 weeks. Gimme. And it's
Well,
like,
I mean, if
no.
you work under Marvel standards, you do, but that's when you have two artists.
Yeah, but you've seen
two
the books
artists
they
with
produce.
got two artists and a letterer working on top of each other, quite literally in a like human centipede fashion.
Well, yeah, you look at the credits, and
about,
it's at least 10 people per book.
Yeah,
yeah, and you have to ask about Mockingbird's feminist agenda. So
Yeah,
I didn't forget. But
I mean, it's so stupid, man. It's like like when I was dealing with a lot of things, it was like, oh yeah, like why isn't things like done already or whatever. It's like you don't you got to write the thing, you got to do a thing. Like I mean, like when I was writing this book that I'm doing now, I'm still writing it. I'm doing some of the art for it. Like the parts that I have really finalized, that's the stuff I'm doing the art for. But for the most part, because I have to work around a lot of other stuff because I'm trying to build my channel back up, and we're doing a lot of different things. Right. So it's like doing that. I'm a one-man crew, so one-man crew doing a big book, it's going to take a while. So that's why I'm like yeah, that's why I'm not doing any funding now. I'm like, I'll do the funding when it's done, because holy shit, people might be waiting a little while. It's just how it is, just by virtue of the fact that
it costs money to process refunds. So I mean, that's another thing that people don't understand. Like everybody that got CyberFrog refunded, like if he had to process, like if it wasn't possible to process a refund from Indiegogo, if once you were signed in, you were just locked in, that book would have made $1 million.
Oh yeah, it was one of those things. Like after a certain point, it's like that book is basically it's a done deal. It's like with Kickstarter, it's like if at the end of the campaign they take your money and they tell you to go fuck yourself. Yeah. Unless there's an extenuating circumstance like the project gets canceled or something happens, you could maybe get your money back, but it's a very, very strict maybe.
Right.
Like there's a lot of people that are still sitting there waiting for refunds 5 years after the fact for some some, like a dumb robot or some dumb shit.
Yeah, no shit. Surely you haven't moved on from that $20 yet. Like maybe just don't back projects that you worry about your money in, because they say in the print, like the big bold print of every one of those websites, you're not buying something. You're putting money into the idea that this project might get done.
Yeah. It's an investment. That's literally what it is.
Right. You might win, you might lose. If you end up with a book, you win.
Right. And
sometimes you back the wrong horse. It happens, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, millennials, have never really played the stock market. They don't understand how investing works. If you invest in this project and it succeeds and you get the book, that's the equivalent of making money off of buying stocks on the stock market.
Yeah.
That's really how you have to look at it. And if you don't get the book, well, you invested in the wrong stocks.
Yeah, you rolled fucking snake eyes. You're bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah. I was always very, it's one of those things. That's the one thing that scares me the most about doing this stuff. It's like, when you're doing a book, it's a very big investment of time,
Oh yeah.
and resources, and like, there's times where it's just like, I don't talk to my wife for like 2 days. It's like, it's a thing that happens because it's you get so invested in this thing, and it's like, people look at you like, if you put out that Indiegogo, the Kickstarter, early. If you do it too early, you're gonna have the situation that Ethan has, where there's people that fuck with him every day, about like, oh, where's the book? Oh, he only got 12 pages done. That kind of crap, and it's like, that's something I want to absolutely avoid. Like, I watch all these campaigns, and I'm like, okay, I need to avoid all of that.
One that I kind of gush over a little, and this is a little bit of a plug, Galactic Rodents of Mayhem by Gilbert Deltrez.
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
Go check it out. It looks amazing.
He started promoting that book a good month and a half, 2 months before he ever launched the Indiegogo. Like, he set the Indiegogo up for the mailing list, and then, everybody that signed up for the mailing list got some links for maybe like a discount or whatever. But he started promoting the book and generating a buzz for it well before ever launched.
He follows me on Twitter, because I saw I saw a thing like it was, I heard it like basically like the other day, where it was someone dropped out from drawing the thing or whatever. And he needed
one of his pinup artists.
Yeah. So I was like, hey, I can do it for you, and then he followed me, and then I never heard from him. So
he's a busy guy, and he's been dealing with that hurricane shit down in Florida. So
yeah, you just have to DM him some artwork, and he'll get back to you.
Hope he's all right, because it was just like, hey, does anyone know how to draw capybaras? And I'm like, dude, I literally spent like a month trolling someone with capybaras. So yeah,
just shoot him at him and be like, hey, you still need some pin art, and he'll get back, because I think I might have actually tagged.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah. Yeah, because I was tagged. I was tagged in it. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I look at it. I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, but he started promoting that. He had a theme song for the actual fucking book, catchy as shit, before he ever launched. Like, I don't think you need to go that far necessarily, but if you start generating that buzz a little bit earlier, then by the time you launch,
if you do want to go that far, I am a musician. Just throwing that out there.
He actually is. He does.
Nice.
Yeah, blues guitar is really kind of my thing. I can fake other stuff. Let's put it that way.
I have an automaton. Yeah, I used to do music too. It was one of those things where it's just like, there was that point where I got out of comics, and I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? I need to do something. So I'm just like, all right, I'm going to do music. So immediately, just like how most musicians do it, I just immediately started a band when I decided to do music.
Yeah.
And we were fucking terrible.
No, I got my first guitar at 6 years old. So.
Well, we always had guitars around the house, and I would always kind of mess with them and stuff, and kind of make up my own songs and everything. And usually the songs were like kind of like, that little kid, like it was always like pee pee poo poo fart joke songs and stuff.
Right.
But then it was like one of those things that got out of comics, and I'm like, what am I gonna? I have nothing going on. I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have anything going on. I'm like, hey, who gets laid a lot? People who do stuff in bands. So immediately I went and I got a guitar immediately, and it was like that day I called up some people like, hey, I knew a dude who played drums, so I'm like, hey, you want to play drums in a band? He's like, yeah, sure. So we all met up that weekend, and we were just like jamming and shit, and we're just like, yeah, we really got this, man. And then what happened was it was that same weekend. It was like the day after, we were still kind of we were jamming through like the whole day, and then I stayed over, and then we were just kind of doing it again the next morning. And we're like, we already had like 3 songs written and everything. And then what happened was some girls came over and they heard us.
Never
and
played
they
music again.
oh yeah, but like check this out. Like we'll play this stuff. We just came up with it. And I'm like, I had only been playing guitar for like, like on and off for a couple of years, but I didn't know how to do anything. So I was more like make up my own sounds kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Sonic Youth meets crippled children, because and the way they looked at us, man, it was a ball shriveling look, man. They look at you and it's just like what are you doing?
Like I'm jamming,
What
babe.
the hell? Yeah, at that point it was just like yeah, I think we gotta not have people around do this and like maybe actually figure out how to do this, and we did, but still didn't really become anything. But it was one of those things, man. The second they give you that fucking look, you just like this is a no go, bud.
Oh yeah,
we're closing down the open
my
viewing
old
session.
band.
But they dried up like a goddamn desert and fucking like laughed at us and left.
Yeah, man, my old band, we actually had some really good material. We were slotted for studio time. Then some shit happened between me and the bass player and our like lead singer, acoustic guitar player, and we kind of split like right before we were gonna start to record, and it was just like, well, we can't do it now because then the rest of us can sing.
Yeah, I know this is not comics, but it is a funny thing.
Yeah.
Later on, when I actually kind of got my shit together, like do a little more music and stuff, it was one of those things where I ended up joining this band, like just out of high school. I ended up joining this band, and I'm playing and I'm doing a little singing, and I'm like, I'm doing all right, kind of getting in there. But the thing is that the other guitarist was this girl who was kind of looking at me. She's just like hey, whatever. The problem was her boyfriend was the drummer.
Oh yeah.
And the second he saw that was not very good because I never made a move or nothing, but she was all like, hey, what you call me?
Giving you the shoulder touch from Spider-Man, Spider-Verse. Hey.
Yeah. She was doing that kind of. She was kind of like, hey, what's up there, buddy? Maybe we'll talk later. Here's my number. Da 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 da. The guy is there watching this happen.
It seems to be some vagina falling out of my pocket. You want to pick that up for me? Maybe hold on to it.
Yeah,
There's a hierarchy in rock and roll.
Right.
Right.
Always move up from the drummer to the guitarist.
Yeah. Well, no, it's the singer, guitar player. They're kind of like side by side, and the bass drummer are kind of like neck and neck. Drummer's a little bit more the bass player, and then if there's a keyboard player, nobody cares about them.
Only keyboard players. They only get play if they're gay.
It kind of reminds me of that old Beatles thing where like you just go like hey Paul, you're the soul of the group, and you have like it's just, you go down the line and talk about how great they are, and then you just turn to Ringo and you go, Ringo, you're the drummer.
The best is during an interview. They said, so do you guys agree that Ringo's the best drummer in the world? And then I think it was Paul goes, he's not even the best drummer in the Beatles.
Yeah, it was one of those things, man. But it was one of those moments where it was like, I finally made it. I was in a band that was actually like together. Like they had some songs already ready to go. We were in a studio.
I'm sorry, I was in a band that was actually together.
Yeah,
I'm in a band. But nobody else knows it but me.
Yeah, it was one of those things. Like we're in a studio. We actually we were in a studio and everything. I'm like sitting there, I'm like, this is my first time in a studio. Like, this is really great. I'm like we're finally gonna do something with this, And then it's just like that happens, and I'll tell you how quick that band broke up. After the first day of the studio, literally about 15 minutes later.
Oh, fantastic! While everybody was smoking a cigarette outside during the during the post show, you're like, yeah, this isn't gonna happen anymore. We're gonna get into a fist fight.
Yeah, that dude wanted to fucking kill the shit out of me. He was a much bigger dude too. I was like, I'm gonna go.
Matt Christie in the chat says, I quit the band, now I just play with myself. That's the best way to be.
Is that at that point I'm just like, I'm gonna be like an experimental, like, you know, I'm gonna do some weird Beck shit or something like that. And then
do some Hugh Laurie shit where you learn how to play like 6 different instruments and you are the whole band. You just have to sync everything together.
Well,
I don't know. It was one of those things where I was inspired by Trent Reznor, you know, because when he did whenever he did the Nine Inch Nails albums, like if you look at like Pretty Hate Machine, when he made Pretty Hate Machine, he was working as a janitor in the studio.
Nice.
And basically he would just fuck around with the equipment and make noises with it and stuff, and they just kind of sequenced it all together and like learned how to do all the stuff because he did music in high school. He was like part of the marching band and shit. So he's like, yeah, I could do the drums, I could do this thing, I could do kind of a guitar thing. That's why the guitars are really simple in Nine Inch Nails stuff, is mostly because he didn't really know how to play that well. So he's just like, all right, I'm just gonna do this, bam, bam, bam. Okay, cool. I'm gonna sequence that, and then he turned it into. It's, you know, to me, it always felt like music and comics always they had sort of a connection, you know, in that way, because it's
I
like,
agree with you.
Absolutely.
You know, I'll bring it back to comics.
There you go. So a lot of hip hop artists feel the exact same way because you know, there's just so much. There's so much in the and this is kind of obscure, but as a little bit of a historian for comic books, there's so much of an underground market on comic books. Just these things that are stapled together and passed around before they ever hit a publisher. It's almost like a mixtape for a comic book.
Well, there's more than that. There's the whole like art aspect to it. Is you write a song and perform in front of people is like kind of like showing who you are, in the same way as like illustrating something is showing who you are as an illustrator. There's a lot of parallels between those two.
Yeah, like it's the way, like when I make comics, it's very like it's sort of like you're building a soundtrack, really, of just like all of these things that all you're trying to, even things that don't work, you're trying to make it work to a degree. And it's like it's like, you know, each, you know, thing is like you're finding the instrument for this, you're finding the sequence for this, you're finding you know, all that. And I'm like, you know, like that's the way I've always thought about it. And I wasn't much of a musician, you know, like I mean I did things here and there, but it was one of those things where it was like I took that and I went right to comics, like right back to it, and that's when I was like, oh, now it clicks in my head, like, oh, this is how I'm doing this. So, you know, sitting there sequencing a track or making a comic book, it has that same feel to me. So you know, that's where I get it.
I can second that on the sense that, you know, it's all about the story beat for me. In a good story, the artwork reflects the writing, right? Because your writer's going to script out the book. So the artwork reflects the writing, and if the writing is off pace, like if everything's happening like bam, 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 bam through the whole issue, it's overwhelming. So you have to have pacing. Like it has to almost be like that perfect curve where it just starts low and starts to curve up and hits the peak and then kind of curves back down into the you know, cliffhanger ending kind of thing.
Right. Well, it's like what I mentioned when we reviewed Killer Groove, how the paneling actually follows
That's
the rhythm.
actually a perfect.
Oh yeah. Have you checked out
Groove.
Killer Groove yet?
I haven't checked out Killer Groove yet, but I have
check it out. It's really good.
I have some things I can actually recommend that actually does have it's not really about music. Well, actually, one of them is Red Rocket 7 by Mike Allred.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, it's basically like that David Bowie kind of vibe to it, where like you can actually listen to David Bowie and kind of follow the beats with the actual proceedings of the thing. And it also applies to Matt Fraction's Casanova.
Oh, that's a good book.
Because what he does is how he did some of the stuff in that, he would actually do that part to the song. You know,
Oh,
like
wow.
so he would
Okay.
actually like he has a track listing of stuff, and he goes like, "This is the song, like this is the song, this is the beats, this is the whole stuff," and all of this is actually the way it's put out. It's basically him doing a song as a sequential work, with
That's-
that stuff. You know,
That's awesome.
while doing a cool spy thing, and like,
Right.
but it's one of those things where it's like he has like the suggested songs and everything. It's like no, like in the comic itself, they'll have little suggestions of track, like this is the track that I did this to.
Yeah.
And like so you could follow along in that way and have like a soundtrack for it.
That's really cool.
I mean that's the way like with some of the stuff that that I do. They'll be like, oh, like there's this really cool David Bowie song, and I would like to kind of do something along like with that,
Right.
and do so. I'm
Space
I guess-
Odyssey.
well, yeah, that's a good one. Even Venture Brothers, even used Bowie. For that one where they had the when they're out on the boat and it was a phantom in a lake.
Yeah.
And no, it wasn't the Phantom. It was like in the ocean or whatever, and like they get him out. It's the Phantom Spaceman
Yeah.
thing. That was basically ground control to Major Tom, all that shit. I mean, they blatantly did the
Right.
lyrics thing, but it's one of those things where you could actually you could play the song, and it fits perfectly. And it's like it's them enacting that whole thing and giving it like a new life to where it feels like a Scooby-Doo cartoon.
Right.
Every
With
time
Bowie in
Bowie's brought up, I can only think about the fact that Vanilla Ice eventually ended up buying the rights to Under Pressure because of Ice Ice Baby.
Oh my god! One time we were jamming, my bass player started playing that riff, and my drummer, being a smartass, started singing "Ice Ice Baby" instead of "Under Pressure." I literally leaned over his drum set and started just wailing at him in the shoulder. I was like, "No, you did not disgrace this song with that bullshit."
No, anytime somebody does that, you just start singing Informer by Snow and fuck them all up.
Oh my God, Snow!
That old.
Oh man. Oh.
We're getting dangerously close to the 3-hour mark, and
we are.
I did not expect that we would have this much of a good time, and if we keep going, we're going to be here at 1 a.m, and all of us are going to hate each other in the morning. So
Yeah.
We don't need another angry show.
I mean, I usually hate you every morning, Church.
It's fine. I blame him for everything. All of my audio problems are Eric's fault. If I don't finish reading something, somehow it's his fault. He's pretty much a patsy on the show. That's the only reason I bring him.
Yeah,
on.
basically. Yeah.
you need a foil.
I mean, just short of like actually shooting Kennedy, like that's about where I fall.
Right.
This is the first time I'm actually actually talking to you guys. Not on Twitter.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what's confused me is that it's Church, man. You in my head, you sounded like different. It's one of those things where, yeah. So it got me confused a little bit. I'm like, Church, I didn't expect it to be Southern, man. Did not expect it.
Hey, well, I mean, takes all kinds. I don't want to be
man.
Southern either. I was just born here.
No, it's one of those things where it's just like I thought you were more like more like the Upper East, but that's not a slam, dude. Because dude, half my family's from the South, so I feel you, brother.
I don't take it as one. I ended up, believe it or not, my actual Southern drawl is much worse than this. This is 30-something years of trying not to handle that Southern drawl. Like that's how deep it is. Toadsuck, Arkansas. Place that I'd stay.
Yeah. Things I probably have some family there too, because like a lot of my family down south is like that's the bigger part of the family. Like you have the Northerners, right?
Yeah.
There's not many of them left. It's not a lot. But like you go down south, you throw a rock, you're hitting someone related to me. So
we can.
You probably know half of them.
I very well may, actually.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like that. They expanded all the way to Texas, so it's just like, oh shit, we're all over the place. At least I know I have a place to crash in at least a good chunk of the states.
Oh yeah,
There you go. There's your benefit to that.
Even though they don't like me because I'm one of them goddamn Yankee assholes. It's like, oh, you're from New York? Oh, okay, fine. You can stay here, but don't touch nothing.
This here, son, this is called a firearm. You use this for self-defense.
Absolutely. Oh my god, yeah. It's just like hey, don't touch nothing. You sleep on the couch, and be gone before I wake up. I own guns.
I'll know if you move my cigarettes.
don't touch my Newports.
That's
Love
a
it.
different kind of
Oh man, this has been fun, man. This has been fun.
that's what I try and do, man. Before we get off here, I guess I can state the mission statement again. I was thinking about doing something like this, and then I started catching, and this is no affront to any comic streamer or anything like that. I love watching Ethan. I like watching Doug. You know, I catch Carry Press every chance I get. I catch Sweetcast, all those guys. I love all the comic streamers on YouTube. I want something fun, laid back, and non-drama related. You know, if you want to come on here and you want to air your grievances, that's all well and good if you're my guest. But that's not what I'm about.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not here to shit talk anybody. And if anybody wants to come on and promote their project, by all means, they can do it. I'm here to promote comics. I'm here to have a good time. I'm here to just kind of laugh and just celebrate comics. Basically go off topic 50 different times and end up going over budget.
dude, that's literally like my magic, man. It's like when we do the morning show, we never plan anything. Like at all. We don't plan topics. We don't plan anything. In fact, like we literally get into the call at exactly the time we're supposed to start, and then we'll bullshit for 20 minutes while everyone waits. and in that time, we never figure out what we're going to do on the show.
Oh yeah,
you know, it's just I may have an idea what I'm going to draw, but past that, nothing, and it's all like this.
We'll collaborate with one another throughout the week on what we're reading, so we can review it and both have an opinion on it. But outside of that, the day of, I'm just like, send me some news articles because I'm building a Magic the Gathering deck. I'm too lazy to look them up.
It's like I'm the comic guy, and you know, and like Eric is the guy who actually had a life experience.
Wait a minute, that's exactly our dynamic.
You stealing our shtick there?
Actually, we stole his. He's been doing this a lot longer than we have.
Hey, as long as they don't have audio issues, it's fine. We won't sue them.
Actually, we have issues all the time.
Yeah.
It got to the point where I actually made a technical difficulty screen.
I should do that. I should just have a scene of technical difficulties.
What it consists of is it's music plays while it's just a drawing of me hitting a computer with a wrench.
Oh, okay. But anyway, hang around for just a minute. I'll say goodbye off air, but I definitely appreciate you coming on. It's been a great time. We haven't done a show this long in a while. Hang around.
Yeah, it just kind of happens, man.
Yeah. Oh no, it's fine. I didn't expect occasionally.
I'm glad we started early. Let me just say that.
Yeah. But you know, when we did the Ken Meyer interview, he was like, I think I got about 30 minutes or an hour, and we were like 2.5 hours later. He's like, oh, it's that time. I definitely appreciate it, and it's been a great time. Like I said, if you ever want to come back on or forward one weekend, let me know, and we'll do a hangout instead of a Skype call.
Oh man. Definitely. It was a lot of fun, man. You guys got a good ship here.
I definitely
Thank you.
appreciate it. We're growing it slow and steady. But to everybody in the chat,
as long as there's growth.
to everybody in the chat, Matt Christie, Novel Bro, Ixel Pierce, everybody to stop by, everybody that's watching in the future, I appreciate all of you. Thanks for stopping in. Do the whole like, share, subscribe nonsense, and
Go
we'll catch
share,
you.
and subscribe to this episode of the Gospel of Comics. It would really help us out. Thank
Brought to
you
you
very
by-
much.
But we will catch you guys tomorrow while we read something written by Ed Brubaker.
Sounds good.